Everybody, welcome back to the Lore de Tour de Jour. Welcome back to Smelly Zovaal, riding around the wonderful world of Azeroth, as he is on his redemption arc. And why is Zovaal smelly? I would recommend to check out the story of Zovaal. You will find out why he is smelly. So Zovaal is on a redemption arc, trying to learn more about the world of Warcraft. We have done Kalimdor before, and we are now in the Eastern Kingdoms. Starting off where it all began, we are at the Dark Portal. Now, the Dark Portal is not red. For our boy Zovaal, it's green, but just imagine that the Dark Portal is red. And we are in a land called the Blasted Lands. Fun fact, this used to be a swampy area. If you've ever done the Caverns of Time dungeon, I think it's the Swamp of Sorrows? No. Hang on, hold, we can look it up. Burning Crusade. The Black Morass, right. If you've ever done the Black Morass, then you can actually see the moment in which Medivh opens up the Dark Portal. And he connects Draenor with Azeroth. But that whole planet was a little bit fel-infused and corrupted. And the corruption started to seep through the Dark Portal into the land here. Now, at the beginning, the Alliance had no idea that the Dark Portal opened up, right? The Horde was creeping in. The Alliance didn't know. The Alliance wasn't even formed yet. But over time, this is Warcraft 1, this is Warcraft 2, this is the foundation of the Warcraft storyline. Reports started to come in about these people, and people were like wondering what the heck was going on. And at some point, we would find out that the Guardian Medivh, the Guardian being the being that was supposed to keep him safe from threats like the Burning Legion and outsiders and all that, the Guardian Medivh had become corrupted, infused with the spirit of Sargeras, and Medivh couldn't help this. Medivh was just an innocent victim in all of this. It was his mother who had fought against the Dark Tide of Sargeras. And during that battle, Sargeras had put a piece of his soul inside of his mother. And then his mom was like, I'm not going to give up my guardian powers. I'm going to decide who gets these guardian powers. You council of men. Ew! So, she got together with Nila Saran, a very powerful mage, and they made their own offspring in the form of Medivh. And Sargeras had his opportunity. He jumped over with his spirit into the boy. Then he was given the powers from his mum. And for a while, he still did the job that he needed to do. But then, power overwhelming, got into like a coma and bits, and then, you know, the whole corruption of Sargeras. And what's really cool is in the Tower of Karazhan, you can see this corruption reflected. Like at the top, it's all very Medivh-y and Guardian-y. There's like the observatory, there's watching the stars and whatnot. But down below, you got stuff like the sinners, the upside-down sinners. You got stuff of corrupted fel and whatnot. And, yeah, the Dark Tide of Sargeras, he wanted the Orcish Horde to come in. Because connected to that storyline, we spoke about the Draenei before. But connected to that storyline is that Kil'jaeden was pissed off at the Draenei. He corrupted the Orcs, had this whole war fought out. The Draenei were nearly exterminated. And then the Orcs were like, okay, cool, now what? And the promised power, all those delicious things that the Burning Legion was going to do for them, it never really happened. Instead, they were now corrupted. They had demon blood pumping in their veins. Things were not exactly going well. And, yeah, their planet was dying. So what were they going to do? Well, what they were going to do was they were going to listen to Sargeras, who was like, I can use this force. So he got into contact with Gul'dan. They set up the Dark Portal, and the Orcish Horde was going to invade. And they were going to weaken the world of Azeroth, make it easier for the Burning Legion to control, conquer, and destroy. Why did Sargeras want to destroy it? Well, because of a whole soul inside, but that's a whole different story. He just wanted the Horde to do as much damage as he could, and so he did. But eventually, the corruption of the Guardian would be exposed, and it would be exposed by Grona Half-Orcan, Khadgar, Anduin Lothar. They would confront the corrupted Guardian. In that battle, Khadgar's youth was drained out of him. And at the beginning, it was like more like, oh, did you like literally suck 60 years out of him? No, not like that. But it was more like a cosmetic thing, apparently, which is interesting. And at some point, Khadgar did not look as Dadgar as he did. He was this old man, Becky Shefref. He's like really old and wrinkly. It was only with like Warlords where they gave him the Dadgar look. Why? They never explained. They were like, yeah, we just want Khadgar to be hot now. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Nobody complained because they like Khadgar's look. Point being, during that confrontation, this was in the Tower of Karazhan, I believe that Medivh's death was like a massive explosion that started to corrupt everything around. And then I think with Legion, they gave an artifact. So I remember that Egwin built the Tower of Karazhan here because it was like a ley line connection where there was a lot of power, right? That made a lot of sense. And there was, I think there was like a Death Knight artifact or a scepter or warlock thingy that sucked the life out of this land. I think. Don't quote me on that. What you can quote me on is that when Medivh was corrupted, this is actually a really cool storyline. It's part of the comics. When Medivh was corrupted, at some point there were these merchants, right? And they showed up at Karazhan and they were like, ding dong, hello, anybody home? And those fools, Ultalesh, riep de zoon, thank you. Those fools were like, hey, Medivh, buddy old pal, would you like to buy some fake, powerful artifacts? Imagine rolling up to the house of the Guardian, rolling up to Sargeras and be like, hey, you want to buy some counterfeit materials? And so Medivh Sargeras was like, you know what I'll do? I'll curse you. You're now cursed. Have fun. And so the Dark Riders were born, and they were cursed to scour the land for powerful artifacts and bring them back to the Tower of Karazhan. Which is why in Legion, they're actually added to the game. Like, this was part of the comics, but with Legion, with the artifact quest lines, they actually added the Dark Riders. Some of you actually fought them, which I thought was really cool. So there's a treasure trove of powerful artifacts somewhere in Karazhan. There's also the Cursed Town people, and the death of Medivh passed on into Duskwood, which I think was called New Hamlet at some point. I would have to look up the Warcraft 1 and 2 maps. This is also lore where way back when it was called like the World of Eastern Kingdoms or something like that. It had weird names. A lot changed and a lot became a lot bigger back then. But yeah, Duskwood is... it was Brightwood. There you go. Because, you know, it turned dark. So first it was Brightwood. It's very Dungeon Keeper-esque, ain't it? But either way, land didn't do so well. It was very creepy, very dark. Not to mention that the Scythe of Elwynn ended up here. And the Scythe of Elwynn is connected to the Worgen. And the Worgen are connected to the Night Elves, Druidism, and a feral pack form. So, we go back in time 10,000 years. Malfurion and the Night Elves have won the War of the Ancients. Yay! Everybody party! Arcane magic has become forbidden by death, punishable by death now, you know, the exile thing. And a lot of them became druids. But some remnants of the Burning Legion were still on the planet, were still a threat. Among them, the Satyr. You might remember how Xavius became the first of the Satyr. Xavius was able to convert more of his people, was then turned into a tree by Malfurion and became the Nightmare Lords. But there were still Satyrs out there. And the Satyrs were a problem for the Night Elves. And the Night Elves were like, Malfurion! Malfurion, we could become more powerful. Allow us to embrace the pack form. Oh, there were a whole bunch of furries. Okay? I'm just gonna say it. Nothing wrong with it. They were great. They were lovely. But Malfurion was like, no. No, no, no. We're not gonna do it. Not in. It's not allowed. But what they didn't know was that Malfurion had already done it. He had already embraced the pack form. And he lost himself to the madness. He lost him. It was only thanks to Cenarius that he was able to come back. So he knew that it was bad. And he just wanted to prevent his students from doing so. But his students would not listen. You know, fighting a wars, you end up in dire situations. And then they took it one step further. And they combined... the scepter of... they combined a priestly scepter of Elwynn with like the Fang of Goldrin. And Goldrin is like this demigod. And they made the... Scepter of Elwynn. Like, as a druid, you can actually use it as a... or Scythe of Elwynn. They made a Scythe of Elwynn, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because if you add a fang to it, it becomes a scythe. And with it, they invoked, like, this whole ritual. And they were originally planning to go through the ritual to, like, give him more control over the pack form. But whoopsie-daisy, they actually made the first of the Worgen. And the Worgen, I mean, they were quite powerful to fight against the Satyr. Except they were also very powerful to fight against their own kind and lose themselves to the madness. And biting people made more Worgen. So what do? Well, Malfurion put them to sleep. He put them in the Emerald Dream, where they would slumber. And you can imagine, as a Worgen that just wants to hunt and track and kill, that was quite a punishment. But yeah, what else are you gonna do? You know, you can't just kill all these poor druids. And they would remain there in the Emerald Dream until many years later we would see, like, at Gilneas, Archmage Arugal would open up a portal. And in the beginning, they didn't make this whole connection, right? But eventually they would explain, like, yeah, it's Worgen, Emerald Dream, and whatnot. Everybody's got to be a Worgen. Yeah. And then in the comics, this whole storyline actually plays out with the Scythe of Elwynn and all that. And the curse of the Worgen that goes through Gilneas. And so we find out that the Scythe of Elwynn has been traveling here. And it's been drawing the attention of the Worgen. I'm trying to think what else we could talk about. Like, there's a lot to talk about at Darkshire. It's like a really cool zone. The Twilight Grove, I believe, is one of the trees with, like, an entrance into the Emerald Dream, which they've used from this. The Emerald Dragons of the Dragons of Nightmare came out. These were world bosses in Classic. I believe in Season of Discovery they use this to make your leveling a bit easier. Ravenhill has the Morledem storyline, which was like a really dark one. I think he came back home and then his family was murdered and he went on like a rampage of vengeance, and then his daughter is still alive, which he didn't know. We gotta like put him out of his misery. There's also Stitches, of course. Stitches is... what is it? A reference to Little Shop of Horrors or something like that? Eliza, you're not pretty. No, Eliza, no. Eliza, why? So basically there's this Abercrombie guy. And he wants to bring his wife back from the dead or something. And he makes like stitches in his heart. And it's all kinds of darkness. And we need to stop them. Yeah. Why exactly are there undeads in Duskwood? Necromancy. That's a bit too vague, ain't it? I was gonna say the Curse of Medivh. But there's most definitely a necromancer in this house. I'm pretty sure. Hello? Are you still in there? Are you only in Classic? Excuse me? Hey! I am Smelly Zoval. You will... no, he's gone. There used to be a necromancer here. It was part of a Classic questline. You had to find parts in order to make like a rod of light, and then you can dispel his darkness barrier. But I guess the questline's no longer there. Whoop! Ow! Hey! Alright, we're taking a little nap, alright? We're taking a little nappy new. The undead in Duskwood are the Scourge. From the Plaguelands? Intermission. If we're intermission, I can look it up anyways. Hang on, because I'm curious now as well. Where did the undead in Duskwood come from? Because I know that the Worgen are pulled in by like the Scythe of Elwynn and whatnot. 7 years ago. Who is responsible? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so in the now non-canon source, it is stated the undead were believed to belong to the Scourge, though what influence they have so far south remains to be seen. I think their appearance can be linked to the same corruption that changed the landscape of areas surrounding Karazhan and Ultimate's blackout during Briarwood into Duskwood. Aside from the specters in the tower, there are also skeletons who might imply that someone raised an undead rather than remain just a lingering spirit. Also, there could be some cult to the damned activity present. At least one necromancer might mean there's ground beneath this statement. Oh, so we don't actually know. Interesting. Morbid Fell is an independent necromancer turned into a lich in Cataclysm. Huh. Interesting. We actually do not have a clear answer on that one. Good question.
And Jitters, making his escape, didn't go unnoticed either. Sven Jorgen, he recruits heroes to help him figure out who that shadowy figure was that he saw the night his family was killed. We track Jitters down. We get our hands on this journal, which details the horrific events. And all of this puts us on a path against the Dark Riders. Sven has seen them before, speaking to the wizard Morbid Fell at the Forlorn Row, a well-known necromancer and an ally to the Dark Riders. Not an easy target to take out, as he has dark enchantments to protect himself from physical assaults. Not to mention the undead that are guarding his home. To get to them, we'll need to be properly armed. All the way to Wetlands, there's his sunken ship. Its cargo is light forged iron, a precious metal for items crafted from it. They strike with holy truth. If we are to face this Morbid Fell, we'll need such a weapon. We'll need his Morbid's Bane. The Dark House has magical protections. They're
Look, that's my classic hunter right there.
struck down with our weapon, but the necromancer himself is also no easy foe. All the same, he is brought low, and a small bit of peace is given to Sven. The Dark Riders, they're still out there somewhere, but at least Morbid Fell has been defeated.
So I'm gonna give a credit to Morbin Fell. And I'm gonna give credit to Medivh's Corruption Unleashed. I'm just gonna give both of them the credit for it. Yeah. Right. You know what's really funny? If you do feign death long enough, you die. Although I don't know if that's a classic thing or if that's back in. Alright, let's get on them out. Whee! Bye now! So that was kind of Duskwood, I suppose. There's also an Ogre Mount, because ogres, I guess. Bunch of farms that have been rotted out. Yeah. What does Stormwind do about it? Nothing! Let us fly into Stranglethorn Vale. So, fun fact. I thought that the Eastern Kingdoms was going to be the place where I had, like, a lot of talk about. And then, Kalimdor, not so much. But it turns out that it's the other way around. Anyways, Eastern Kingdoms, we find Zul'Gurub and the Gurubashi Trolls. The Gurubashi Trolls have a history with Hakkar the Soul Flayer, the Loa of Blood. And, as the name perhaps implies, Hakkar liked sacrifices. So, once upon a time, the Trolls were living here, they're having a grand old good time, making sacrifices. Until they realized, okay, this is going a little bit too far. So the Zandalari, they sent like the emissaries, and they tried to take care of business, and they tried to clear out Zul'Gurub. And they managed to do quite a bit. Except not every follower was taken care of, and they would go into not the Dark Portal. They would go, not in Redridge either. Not the Blasted Lands. Where would they go? They would go into the Swamp of Sorrows. So here we have the Temple of Atal Hakkar, right? So the priests that were like dealing with Hakkar were like the Atalai and Hakkar and all that. So they were chilling in the temple and they were trying to bring Hakkar back still. Which started to mess around with nature and the lands around it. And it drew the attention of the Green Dragonflight. Up to the point where Ysera herself was like, hey, don't do that. And then she smacked the temple into the water, which is why we call it the Sunken Temple. We also have, like the city of Zul'Gurub, of course. We would eventually go back in, because Hakkar doesn't really like to stay dead. And in Classic, we dealt with it. Where it's like, oh no, they're bringing Hakkar back. And I'm pretty sure that we were the ones who made that happen, because there was this whole quest line. In the hinterlands, there was like this Ek of Hakkar, and then we brought it to the Sunken Temple, and then they were like, oh, but this was just a ruse. The real Hakkar is actually in Zul'Gurub. And so we went into Zul'Gurub with the, we teamed up with the Zandalari Trolls, who gave us like sick rewards, and we burned bee juice. And we took care of business until Cataclysm, where the troll Jindo showed up, and Jindo had like epic powers or whatnot. And he was very much dealing with the afterlife as well. But Jindo flew a little bit too close to the sun. And he decided to, like, chain up Hakkar and steal the powers, which the Loa did not appreciate. So when we set him free, Jindo was in a bunch of trouble. Yes, he was. I'm trying to think what else we got here. Venture Co. is mainly with the goblins. And add-on, Zul. Add-on is called Universal Explorer, which is why it gives me these markers for going for it. My brain is mainly set on Season of Discovery right now, which is you go into Stranglethorn to, you know, fight each other, earn blood tokens. Well, one thing that we cannot miss, of course, is the Nesingwary expedition. This is where Hamet Nessingway, aka Hamet Nessingwary, which is WoW's version, has a questline for the Blue Hills of Stranglethorn. And he basically, as adventurers, go around gathering the pages, because he was writing a book, and then the page got scattered through the jungle, and he's like this master hunter, right? But don't worry, he doesn't just... The Green Hills, even. The Blue Hills, my brain is not on yet, sorry. Give it a moment, it will rev up. Don't worry about it. And if not, hey, at least you got, like, these moments. So he goes around asking people like, hey, can you get me these pages? But the fun thing is that you could actually get those pages from the auction house as well. So it was really easy leveling for later characters. At least I always found it really easy. A good bit of experience in there. With the Cataclysm, we also had this really cute raptor questline, where we made a raptor friend, and then that raptor was taken into Zul'Gurub. Ah. So Val's been sent to Deepholm. Aw, man. I thought maybe that's a cool little Easter egg as well, but nah. So there's the trolls here. I think the Darkspear trolls also originate here from here, right? I think. Either way, the trolls deal with the Loa. And we didn't really talk about it last time when we had the chat with like Sen'jin Village or whatnot. So Hollow, Orgrimmar, is over yonder, like Echo Isles and Sen'jin Village and Vol'jin and the Darkspears. So Vol'jin took over from Sen'jin. And Sen'jin was his dad, was the leader of the Darkspear trolls. But the Murlocs took him out, man. Now you might laugh at this, but if you've ever played Classic, then you know that Murlocs are deadly business. And this happened in the Warcraft 3 campaign. So, in that time period, Vol'jin was on his whole quest for becoming the best shadow hunter he ever was. And for this, they have rituals in which they go into some kind of wacky forest and they deal with the Loa and they test you and they see if you're like worthy of it. And in that short story, there's also the hint that his dad showed up as one of the Loa, which was kind of cool. Because it offered the idea of, oh, trolls themselves could become Loa. And this is then further pushed on with a Bonsamdi, who was once upon a time a worshipper of Muzala, but he like rose up in the ranks. Or something like that. It was kind of cool. Like a priesty of Muzala. So the Loa are, in troll terms, a troll will call a wild god a Loa. But not all the Loa are wild gods. So wild gods are creatures like Cenarius or Goldrin. They would be called a Loa by the trolls, but then you also got other Loas, like, I don't know, Shadra, or Bonsamdi, or, you know, mainly in Battle for Azeroth, we saw quite a bit of troll lore with the Loas. And someone like Vol'jin as the Darkspear, as a Shadow Hunter, he has the Loa at his side, which is a really cool class, which might be something, you know, to consider. I don't think Shadow Hunter became one of the hero talents, right? You don't like the Wild God categorization? Perhaps it would be better if they keep it like their own thing, but... so eventually, Vol'jin, together with his buddy... What was it? Zul'jin? Zul'jin. Maybe. The one who goes against them. Help me out here, chat. Because it's been far too long ago. It's the one that goes against them that starts turning the Darkspears into zombies. Was that Zul'jin? Because I'm thinking Zul'jin was Zulaman. So then you would have Vol'jin. Sen'jin was his dad. Come on. Zanzil? No, not Zanzil. Zanzil was from Zul'Gurub. Think, Brain! You find him later in Nazmir under the hands of, like, Bonsamdi, where he's not having a good time. Zelazane! That was it. Zelazane, yes. Zelazane joined Vol'jin on this quest as well. And both of them were, like, given visions of the future, right? So, those visions were then forgotten about as they got out of the forest. But they were promised, like, you're going to betray each other, you're going to become enemies and whatnot. And Zelazane completely lost his mind, from our perspective, I suppose, and turned against Darkspears. And so Vol'jin had to do the whole thing like, we're going to save you now. As well as with the Warcraft 3 earlier campaigns, there was this whole Sea Witch arc that tried to, like, bring the island down upon them and had to flee really quickly. And they've added with the Cataclysm, I think, because I'm not trusting a whole lot of my words right now. But with the Cataclysm, they actually added that Sea Witch, and they explained, like, oh yeah, it was actually a Naga that did that. So you take care of her in the Troll Darkspear introductionary questline, where you always also lose, like, a close friend. Spoilers! But yeah. That's kind of cute. I'd also remember Gurubashi Arena, one of the classic trailers, that there was this big old creature in the arena that never really made it into the game. And then later they put in a chest so that people would start fighting each other. Explorers League is around. I'm trying to think if there's anything major to talk about. I mean, this is Booty Bay. Like, basically this is massive pirate town. But you do gotta keep it a little bit clean. Treasure to be found. Giants that are taunting each other. There's the whole hunting quest that goes on. A lot of debts that need to be repaid. Pirate Day is, of course, something that you're being pulled in here for. Think Pirates of the Caribbean, I suppose. And Sylvie, thank you very much for the 8 months. Hello, hello, hello. I should check the Gurubashi Arena trailer for Hearthstone. I know that one. Yeah. Goblin Jesus. Goblin Jesus has a lot of treasure inside. Look at that. Hey. Okay. Don't do it. Ow! What the? Alright, don't go for treasure. You will die. Howdy, Argus. Alright, come on, brain. Let's go. We got this. Where else can we travel? We done the Dark Portal. Invasion of the Horde. Stranglethorn Vale we got it into. Duskwood has been covered. Okay, so we got Westfall. Sure, we can go to Westfall first. There's also Vol'jin's son being mind-controlled. Yes, but that questline is super weird. Like, that's the only time that I mention Vol'jin might have a son. And it's never brought up again. Ever. And I'm like wondering if they maybe made a mistake with the quest dialogue or not, whatnot. And yes, we are definitely leveling the hunter. Yes. Warcraft 3 Horde intro where you rescue the trolls. Correct. Yes, when Thrall's given like the message from Medivh, like go find me, blah blah blah. I think they end up in a storm and they like land on the islands and they meet Sen'jin and Vol'jin and all the good stuff. Welcome to the wonderful lands of Westfall, the breadbaskets of the human empire, which has been left to rot for far too long. The royals of Stormwind need to wake up. They need to realize that the people need to eat. So, this land is farmers' land. And once upon a time, we would have that first Orcish Horde invasion, and Stormwind would fall, right? Stormwind would not be able to hold the line. They would retaliate, they would get the world together and form the Alliance of Lordaeron. No farmers, no food, exactly. But Stormwind fell. And so Stormwind had to be rebuilt, which takes a lot of money, a lot of power, a lot of manpower, a lot of work. But Edwin Van Cleef and the Stonemasons Guild, they did that work, right? They did that work. They brought back Stormwind. They set up Nethergard Keep. They did the work. But when it was time to pay the bill, what did the Stormwind nobles say? They said, heck no, we will not pay you. Now the nobles, in their defense, they did have the Black Dragon Onyxia in Stormwind courts. Lady Katrana Prestor pretending to be part of them, manipulating events, right? But you know how nobles are. They never pay the working class. You know how it goes. So, the Stonemasons Guild led riots through the streets. Let's form a riot. And during those riots, there was a rock. One single rock that took the life of young Tiffin Rin. Wife of Varian Rin, mother to Enduin Rin. And now Edwin Van Cleef and the Stonemasons were wanted. Oh, they were wanted. They killed royalty. They had to hide out. So what they did is they hide out in Westfall. And they became bandits. They started to steal from the local farmers. You know, they were against the royalty because Stormwind, they messed them up. They messed them over. So the so-called heroes of the Alliance were called in and they were like, hey, the Defias Brotherhood, eventually we found out about the Defias Brotherhood and the hold up and whatnot, this whole really cool quest line with sick rewards. They were like, hey, Defias Brotherhood is in Dead Mines, go take care of them. Now, what was the Defias Brotherhood's big plan? They had themselves a ogre boat, an ogre tanker. One single boat they had, and they thought that that boat was going to be good enough to bring Stormwind to his knees. I don't know why they thought that. But they did. I don't know why. It's one stupid little boat. Hey, you gotta have some hope, right? You gotta have some hope in life. But obviously the whole plans were stopped before it went anywhere. We went in. We took out a juggernaut even. An ogre juggernaut thingy, yes. We went in. We took care of business. And, you know, we cut off his head for good measure. It is a big boat, but Stormwind is bigger than a single boat, alright? It's one boat with a crew of 5 against Stormwind. Alright, whatever. Edwin is decapitated. We brought proof of demise. But little did we know that in the cabin, as we were killing Edwin Van Cleef, his daughter was watching. His daughter saw us slowly cut his throat, tenuous, bone, ripping off the head. His daughter witnessed it all. And as she frolicked out of the cabin, she goes like, Daddy! Daddy! And that daughter would be Vanessa Van Cleef. She would rise up. Well, first she would grow up with some farmers undercover, and then she would rise up in order to take over where daddy has fallen. And she did way better. Still didn't succeed, though, but she did way better than her daddy did. And Vanessa would go on to become part of the Rogue Order Hall. Yeah, so that's kind of the story of Westfall. And Vanessa would also bring the people together much more than her father did, because her father was like the bandits and whatnot. But Vanessa, you know, this is Cataclysm time period. And all that time, Stormwind has kind of neglected taking care of Westfall. And the people were hungry. They were starving. And starving people will rise up and form militias and try to fight against you. And what did Stormwind do in that time? They put up a freaking statue of Varian. And it's like, you're not that poor, okay? If you can put up a statue of Varian, you can feed your people. But they did not. So Vanessa actually has, like, this is one of my more favorite storylines. Vanessa actually has a really cool, the Defias Brotherhood storyline is actually really cool. Because there is something to be said about their side. Like, are we the bad guys? There's definitely something to be said there. So that's kind of cool. Do we have anything else? I don't know if she's there. Let's see if we can find out. Thank you, Niels Ars. I'm playing tour guide today, so I get to wear a hat. Are you here, or are you only here when you're on a quest? I think you're only here when you're on the quest, I know. Okay. There's a character here. My brain is very tired, sorry. I'm trying to remember her name. Sally? Sully? No, Sully is the dwarf. Help me out here. She's a gunner. She dies in the Legion Order Hall quest. She was part of the SI-7. Amber Kiernan, thank you. Amber Kiernan is here. And she was a pretty cool character. And we would find, you know, party with her door, Mr. Pandaria. She's not police girl. Police girl. Put me between your... Oh... You're getting me started. So Amber Kiernan was this really cool character with Mr. Pandaria. And we you know, there was potential for really cool storytelling. And she died in Legion for no apparent reason besides, oh yeah, we needed the character to die. It's like, huh, alright. And love back Sylvie. Yeah. And an Arcane Whirlpool, which one? Sorry, I missed out. So here we have Elwynn Forest. And Elwynn Forest, again, it's very farmy. You know, people gotta eat. It's surrounding Stormwind City. There's a lot of mines where basically the idea behind You Know Take Candle came from. But they've taken a You Know Take Candle into a more grounded direction. It's not just that the kobolds really like candles. There's a reason for it, right? Like, they know what happens in the darkness. They have connected it to the void, to an actual boss in the dungeon now. The kobolds have more reasons to yell, you know, take candle, besides, don't take my stuff. Here we got Norshire Abbey, which, with the original Horde invasion, was wiped out. And this gave Alonsus Fall the idea of, you know, priests are great, but priests are also very squishy. So what if priest was not squishy? And he started thinking about this idea, right? Just thinking about it, and he was like, what if we could combine the martial prowess of a warrior with the holy teachings of the church? I wonder what we would come up with. And what they came up with were the first of the paladins. Way, paladin! Ooh, ooh, ooh. And a good thing too, because the Horde, they also had done a thing. The Horde had also done a massive thing. And the Horde had figured out, like, what if we take corpses and we infuse it with the spirits of orcs and then give them, like, sick abilities, like necromantic abilities? And they came up with the first of the Death Knights. So, you know, you have people like Terran Gorfiend versus Terralion, which was really cool battles to see, because light versus darkness. The add-on, by the way, is called Universal Explorer. So that's kind of cool. The birth of the paladins and whatnot. And of course, Stormwind. Stormwind is one of the bigger kingdoms that sprouted from the original Arathi Empire, which presumably is also where the new Arathi Empire came from. And Stormwind has seen some rough times. So like I said, it fell before. And then they rebuilt it. And they rebuilt it after, you know, the Horde was defeated and the day was saved and the Dark Portal was closed. And the Dark Portal was closed. This whole alliance of Lordaeron had set foot through the Dark Portal and closed it on the Draenor side. So they did not know if that alliance of Lordaeron had survived. That's the reason why in front of Stormwind there are statues of Khadgar, Kurdran, Dun of Trollbane, Illyria, and Turellian. These were, like, the 5 original sons of Lothar that set through the portal. And there were more, you know, there was a whole army that followed with them, but these was, like, the main characters. And this was to honor them, right? So, wouldn't you know our surprise when the portal reopened with the Burning Crusade? We're like, oh, you're all alive. That's cool. Then in the city itself, we've got the cathedral where once upon a time Arthas was like, Arthas! Be blessed by the light. And then the light took like 5 seconds extra and Arthas was like, grumble, grumble. And nobody loves me. The light doesn't love me, grumble, grumble. With the rebuilding of the Stormwind. Oh yeah, because with the Cataclysm, we had like Deathwing show up and Deathwing destroyed a bunch of stuff. But then they rebuilt the city, which is kind of cool. So we got the SI7, which is like the secret organization is hanging out here in Stormwind. We've got the PvP area, of course. We got the Keep, where once upon a time Enduin punched Rephion. That was always a fun memory. We've got the area with like... Oh, God. We got the guards! The guards! We got the guards. But this is like the... Oh, we can show you. So over there, you see that little cogwheel. That's the entrance into the Deep Run Trem. And this was, with the whole formation of the Alliance of Lordaeron and taking the battle to the Horde, the gnomes and the dwarves and all that, they actually became allies. And so we wanted to keep that allegiance going. And so they built this whole trem between Stormwind and Idaforge. And you might think, oh, you know... That's easy enough to fix, right? But no. You gotta imagine that gnomes are tiny. So they were dealing with rats. To which they were like, hey, Turellian, we need some people to take care of these rats. They're killing our gnome forces. And Turellian was like, oh, brother, fine. So, yeah. That's kind of fun. As always, those little details, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cute. The weapon of Turellian's the same broken blade from when he fought the orcs, or is it just a reference? I think it is, to be honest. I don't think he changed his weapon along the way. I think. Do I want to fly back into Stormwind? I don't think I do. I think that's going to be deadly. Well, Lion's Rest is, of course, where they keep Invarian. There's also the grave for Tiffin. I think that's about it. Zoval is Horde. Yes. Yes, he is. Let's go into Sebi's favorite area, the Redridge Mountains. So where were Illyria and Turellian during TBC? So we go into the Burning Crusade. We see that their son Arator comes in to find his parents. But no Turellian, no Illyria. We find Khadgar, we find Kurdran, we find Dunoff, but none of Illyria and Turellian. And we're like, okay, where the heck did they end up? And for the longest time, we did not get a hint of this. Which is interesting. Like, you gotta imagine that if they added their son to the storyline, what did they have originally in mind with the Burning Crusade? What storyline did we not get when it comes to Illyria and Turellian? But eventually, with Warlords of Draenor, we would get our first hints. So with Warlords, we were on an alternate reality. In the garrison, there was the inn that you could place. And in the inn, there were random-ass quest givers that would show up, and they would give you different kind of quests. One of them had you go into the Shadowmoon Burial Grounds to find evidence of Illyria, and miraculously you do. You find like an arrowhead, so you bring it back, and like, oh! And they also started to update the loading tip from nobody's seen Illyria Turellian for years. So, you know, Illyria and Turellian were on their minds. And after Warlords, there came Legion. And with Legion, we would finally find out what happened to them. And if you are invested in the story to War Within, I would highly recommend to check out the 1000-Year War audio drama. It's on YouTube. It's officially done by Blizzard. It's phenomenal. It explains what happened to them. It's, while on Outlands with the Dark Portal closed, they were found by the Army of the Light, by Lothraxion. who recruited them into the Army of the Light to fight their 1,000-year war against the Burning Legion, against the darkness, to keep the world safe. That's what happened to them. And then we would find them during Legion. Redridge. Lordy, what is there to say about Redridge? Great place to gank low levels. Part of the Depth Mines questline. With the Cataclysm, it added one of my favorite questlines, which is John J. Kashan, aka Rambo. It is one hell of a questline where you jump on a tank and yelling Rambo lines. You get his bandana. Blackrock Invasion here. Trying to think, because for the quest lines, there's also a bunch of dragons here. There's a bunch of gnolls. Oh, we didn't even talk about Hogger. There's Hogger in Elwynn Forest. Really memey gnoll because it was super powerful. Nobody could take him on. So he became like this legendary status. And then with Classic, he was brought back and people were like, oh, he's actually really easy. Oh, one little detail that's kind of cool to show is if you look at gnoll 10s, right? Is it here? Yeah, look. So, gnolls have to make 10s, yeah? But if you don't have cloth, what do you use to make 10s? And, well, Malfurf even. You use human skin. They used human skin to make these 10s, which I always thought was really cool. Leave me alone, thank you. I'm trying to remember, like, there was a quest line here with, like, an orb that was taken or whatever. With the Shadowlands in the pre-event, this is where Ben died. So, in the Shadowlands, they explained, which is really funny. In the Shadowlands, the story was that Zovaal had broken the, he had broken the Arbiter. So, souls were no longer being judged, and all of it just funneled into the Maw. And then we had the Kyrian Order Hall, which had like or Covenant. And it had a storyline that goes on, in which they explain that it's the Kyrians who bring the souls into the Shadowlands. And so they go into Redridge to show how the work is done, right? And they pick up the soul of poor Ben. Ben died. Ben was sent to the Shadowlands. They drop Ben into Oribos, and Ben goes whoop, into the toilets, into the Maw, into the Warcraft's hell. To which the Kyrian are like, oh my god, what are we doing here? But then nothing happens. And we realized, wait a minute. We could stop Zovaal from getting more powerful. We could stop the problems of the Shadowlands. All that we need to do is to tell the Kyrians to stop throwing souls into the Maw. And there's one NPC who is like, yeah, that we could do that, but I don't know. And it's like, why didn't we do that? I don't know. So I thought it was really funny. And Ben is still stuck in the Maw to this day. Yeah, Sylvanas needs to save him. We don't see Ben ever again. It's so sad. There was also an escort quest in here. I don't know who you escorted, but there was an escorting quest in here, and it was awful. Because I was on a PvP realm back in the day on Skullcrusher. Shout out to Skullcrusher. I would always get ganked, Sabby Webs TV. I would always get ganked while doing that escort quest. So over here, we go into the Burning Steppes. And the Burning Steppes has like this gate system going on. And it's connected to Redridge Mountains. And the history on this place is that we got like the Blackrock Mountain here, yeah? The land is all scorched and messed up, and it's not beautiful. But it was once upon a time part of like an area which you call Redridge. And in this area, the Dark Island Dwarfs. So we're going back in time. Hey! We're going back in time around 700 years-ish to the War of Three Hammers. Their king, Modimus Envolmar, had died, and the three dwarven clans, the Dark Islands, the Bronzebeards, and the Wildhammers, they used to live in Idaforge, all peaceful like, but with the king gone, civil war broke out, and they started to bash each other over the heads. And being the main military force, the Bronzebeard won that war, and so they kicked the others out. And the Wildhammer dwarves, they set up in Grim Battle. Whereas the Dark Islands, they would set up in Redridge. I think it's right here, or is it on the other side? Yeah, here, Ruins of Fauruzan. So their emperor was called Fauduzan, right? Ruins of Fauduzan. And funny enough, the dwarves would actually do really well. Like the Wildhammers and the Dark Idons were absolutely fine. Except the Dark Idons' ego could not let them go of the war. As well as their Empress, Modgut, was wielding Xal'atath, which probably did not help. And so they kept their war going, and they struck out again. Fauduzan would go to Idaforge, and Modgut would go to Grimbatol. In the battle at Grimbatol, Modgut unleashed darkness upon the place, and was fighting the Wildhammer dwarves. And then Xal'atath... Records are unclear, we weren't there. Like, did Xal'atath betray her? Was she just too weak? Did she abandon her at just the right time? It doesn't really matter. What does matter is that Modgut was slain by the Emperor of the Wildhammers. And she died saying, you promised, to Xal'atath. Very similar to, you know. Then the Dark Idons at Idaforge were also getting their asses kicked. So the Bronzebeards, they show up at the Wildhammers, like, hey, good job, want to team up, take care of the Dark Idons? They were like, yeah, let's do it. So Emperor Fauduzan was very sad, because his wife had died, and they were losing this war, and things were not going exactly as planned. So he was working on his spell, bibbidi-bobbidi-boo, and his spell kind of lost control. And he created the Blackrock Mountain. And he accidentally summoned Ragnaros from the elemental plane of fire. By fire be purged! So this whole area was not all shitty as it is right now, but it became shitty because of the Dark Idol spell work. And the Blackrock Mountain wasn't even there until, you know, Fauduzan did it. So at that point, the Bronzebeards and the Wildhammers were like, I think we won the war, let's go home. The Dark Idons were enslaved to Ragnaros for like 700 years. And the darkness unleashed upon Grimbatol would actually create the Skardin. The same Skardin in the War Within. So, events from Xal'atath in the past are coming back to the forefront now, which is interesting. And of course the whole summoning here. Now we also flew by a beautiful little statue. Dun, dun, dun. Was the mountain there? I thought he created the mountain dirty. Oh, you're making me doubt now. Hang on. Ugh, because I thought this was like Redridge area. Hang on. Blackrock Mountain. Do the Google, because I do want to make sure that I don't want to tell you wrong information. Blackrock Mountain. The mountain is a volcano that was created at the end of the War for the Hammers when the Dark Idol Lord Fauduzan accidentally summoned Ragnaros the Fire Lord from his prison to the Firelands. Yeah. It shattered a large section of the Redridge Mountains, creating the areas now known as Searing Gorge and Burning Steppes, creating the Blackrock Mountain. Yup. Yo. So, oh, hey. This is Anduin Lothar. And Anduin Lothar was the same guy who was there with Khadgar and Corona Half-Orcan, exposed the corruption of the Guardian Medivh. But then Stormwind still fell to the orcs that were already on the planet, right? He would then go on in order to go to the lands of Lordaeron. He took Varian with him and survivors. They set sail across to the lands of Lordaeron, where they formed the Alliance of Lordaeron, and he would become a massive hero in the battle. The reason that there's a statue here is because in that final battle between Anduin Lothar and Orgrim Doomhammer, Doomhammer won. And he bashed Lothar's skull in. To which then Turalyon found his connection to the light and absolutely beat out of Doomhammer. But yeah, Anduin Lothar lost his life here, saving the world. Just at the end, was taken out. And in honor of him, they called themselves the Sons of Lothar. Because, you know, he was like their general, their captain. Oh, captain, my captain. Now, with the Chronicles, they have made small adjustments. No. The Blackrock Orcs found the mountain, but the Blackrock Orcs wouldn't find the mountain until like 700 years later. So, 700 years ago, that was the War of the Three Hammers, which, like, the summoning of Blackrock Mountain. And then for, like, centuries, the Dark Idons were enslaved to Ragnaros, and then the Dark Portal opened up, and the Blackrock Orcs found it. And it's a good thing that you mentioned it, because with Chronicles, again, they added bits and more pieces to it. So the Blackrock Mountain would not remain just the home base of the Dark Idons and Ragnaros. More would find a way to the Blackrock Mountain. We would have a Nefarian in order of his daddy Deathwing, that set up base into the Blackrock Mountain as well. And there was a bit of a conflict going on with Ragnaros, like who gets to have what. So Nefarian got like the top level, and Ragnaros got the lower levels. Because both of them, in essence, were working with the old gods, right? Although I say that now, was Raggy working with the old gods directly? I don't think so. There was Cho'Gall and the Twilight Hammer. He was very much this. I think it was more the case of both would work for the favor of the old gods anyways. Because, you know, the whole Black Dragon corruption is with the old gods. Ragnaros the Fire Lord would work with the old gods in the Cataclysm. Cho'Gall and the Twilight Hammer were very much going for the Hour of Twilight prophecy. The world plunged in darkness and everybody is done. They party-hardied in the Blackrock Mountain. And I do believe that the Blackrock Orcs were already called the Blackrock Orcs before they found the mountain. They just found it as a coincidence. Like, hey, that's handy. We're called the Blackrock Orcs and there's a Blackrock Mountain. This is home. After the Horde got their asses kicked and the Dark Portal was closed, there would be remnants of the Horde still on the planet. And so they would set up within the Blackrock Mountain because this was like their home base of the Horde, ain't it? And they would form something called the Dark Horde. Which is why when you go into UBRS and LBRS, you're asked by Thrall, like, hey, can you go in and take care of the Dark Horde? Because, you know, there can only be one Horde. But there's the Dark Horde, there's Thrall's Horde, Garrus' Horde, Sylvanas' Horde, the Iron Horde, the First Horde, Ner'zhul's Horde, Gul'dan's Horde. There's been so many hordes. So many hordes. It feels like the Orcish invasion should have happened at least a century ago instead of just decades. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Like 40 to 50 years, so much happened on Azeroth. It's so many hordes. Trying to fit. Sorry, I was reading chat as well, so I missed certain bits. Cauldron. Forium Advance. I mean, the Blackrock Mountain itself is not a massive explorative place, but there is a lot of interesting stuff that happens in the Blackrock Mountain. It is there we would liberate Moira Bronzebeard, who was kidnapped by the Dark Idons. Those same Dark Idons that were enslaved to Ragnaros the Fire Lord, except we would find out that during the kidnapping, Moira actually fell in love with the leader of the Dark Idons. He showed her things that she had never known before. Her father did not treat her with respect, and the Dark Idons most definitely did. So Moira fell in love, they had a child, and Magni did not notice, nor would he have cared, I guess. So he asked us, the heroes, to go into the Blackrock Depths to take care of business, and so we killed Moira's husband. You might recall in Classic how you could actually... you could keep Moira alive during the fight, and I think you got like bonus loot, but I'm not exactly sure. Now, if you're curious, like how can this be, like kidnapping and Moira falling in love, was that always the case? Nah. Like... I think this is definitely a bit of a revisal of the history because she's walking around in a Princess Leia outfit. I don't know. You know? I don't know. I don't think that was the original story planned back then. I think it was more like a Star Wars reference. But they've definitely used it in their advantage because Moira, when we took care of business, she was like, why would you do this? And Moira started to work from the mountain in order to take care of business. So Moira is the one who liberated the Dark Idons from their enslavement by manipulating the Alliance and the Horde to come into the mountain and take care of all these threats. So she had us come in and take care of Ragnaros. She had Thrall and the Horde come in to take care of the Dark Horde and, by extension, Nefarian. Nefarian was here busy trying to make chromatic dragons, which is basically getting all the different dragon colors into one. And Chromatis was the close that he got. Now, he didn't know about the Dragfear from his daddy, which is a whole different story. Well, hey, we took care of Nefarian, we took care of the Dark Hordes, with Rend Blackhand and all that. Ragnaros was taken care of, which meant that the Dark Idons were liberated. And then Moira could come back to Idaforge with the Cataclysm, where her... whatchamacallit? Her father was turned to a crystal due to the whole going through a Titan ritual. So it was her moment to shine and be like, hello, Idaforge, I am back. But that failed. And then with Warlords of Draenor, they once again went back to UBRS, where Warlord Zayla, who was allied to Garrosh, had like this iron star that they were planning to throw out of the mountain towards Stormwind. And for some reason, the Horde was like, okay, let us help you out with that as well. And with the anniversary coming up, we're gonna see a revamped Blackrock Depths. Now, I don't have fond memories of Blackrock Depths. I always felt like Blackrock Depths took way too long. But that's also because I overdosed on it in Classic. I understand that people really loved it. I've just done that place far too much, and I've wiped too many times to still have fond memories of it. Oh, there's also the Onyxia Attunement questline, where you go in to save Marshal Windsor, who found out that Onyxia was a black dragon, and you actually bring her back to Stormwind to expose her. That is how we found out that Katrana Prestor was actually Onyxia. We expose her, she turns to a dragon, she kidnaps Elwynn into her lair, and that whole good stuff. You were one of my favorite YouTubers? Aw, I would sleep listening to your lore videos. I'm glad you're still at it. Thank you, Demon Cats. Thank you very much. Welcome to the stream. We're doing a tour of the lore. We're taking Zoval on a redemption arc, showing him the world that he tried to destroy, and talking about the lore as we go along. At least as much as my brain is giving me, because it's not fired up. Let's put it like that. I'm struggling. Let me tell you, I'm struggling. But we're getting there. We're getting there. Go on, brain, we got this. We done Burning Steps. Badlands. Oh, God. See, I never really... The whole Badlands thing during Classic never really called to me. I did find it really cool that you had, like, gates between the zones, so you could get keys in order to make it easier to get through those gates and make, like, shortcuts. But the questing in the Badlands... I'm even trying to think by Season of Discovery standards. I think Season of Discovery had like this really cool gear that you had to get, but it was really hard to pick up. So mainly what I think back to when it comes to the Badlands is... The day Deathwing came. Sheldon, thank you very much for the prime. So with the Cataclysm, they added new quest lines. And Deathwing, as he broke out of the world, he did a whole show around the world. Like, look at me, I'm Deathwing, I'm burning stuff now. Achievements were earned, and then here there were a group of 3 that would talk about the day the Deathwing came, and I remember Jesse Cox doing a Cataclysm video on this with voice acting and just bringing it to life, and it was like, oh, that is so freaking cool. At some point, yeah, like the gnome has like a world shrinker, so they make themselves gigantic, and it would punch Deathwing in the face, or driving on your bike, or, you know... Zeline, thank you very, very much for the 3 months as well. So I remember the day Deathwing game questline. And then there's the whole part about creating Rephion, which I'm pretty sure was here, right? It has like that weird camp. Hang on. Yeah, because she was chilling here, right? Yes. So this is Rhea. If you've never done this questline before, I would highly recommend to do it. Oh, thank you, Sheldon. Because this is one of the better ones, to be honest. So, the idea is that once upon a time, millennia ago, like far before the War of the Ancients, like 20,000 plus years ago, if not longer, we would see the rise of Galakrond. And if you played Dragonflight, if you played the War Within, you might have heard Galakrond before. It was like a big proto-dragon, it mutated, became a big old threat, and it was the union of Alexstrasza, Ysera, Malygos, Nosdormu, and Neltharion, who were able to bring Galakrond down and save the day. And in turn, they were empowered by the Titans to become the dragon aspects, right? But what they didn't know was that our Deathwing, our Neltharion, he was already hearing the whispers of the old gods. And I can imagine that his connection as the Earth Warder, because that was his aspect, right? I can imagine that that didn't exactly help things. So over the millennia, the old gods whispered to him, "You're nothing. You will crawl for us. You're a sad little dragon, aren't you?" Up to the point where this behemoth of a dragon, at first he probably resisted. But over time, those voices started to get to him. And you know what? I feel him, you know? So... what's really cool, by the way, is that in the War of the Scaleborn, where this is like early days, you can see that the voices are tearing him down. Then later, in something like the War of the Ancients, the voices would let him rise up and be like, "You're amazing, you're more powerful than any of them, you should be the one in charge." Which then caused Deathwing, the Black Dragon aspect, to turn against his fellow dragons. He would create something called the Dragon Soul, which would have the power to, well, make him king, basically. Like, everybody had given up a portion of the power, they put it into that amulet, and Deathwing was the one who could wield it. And they did this because at the time, with the War of the Ancients, the Burning Legion was invading the world, and this was going to be like their best shot to stop them. But little did they know that Deathwing was actually listening to the whispers of the old god and was getting ready to betray them. Now, Fast forwarding a little bit to get the story to Refeon, we are in the Cataclysm time period. They're revamping quest lines. This is the Cataclysm. Deathwing is a big threat to the world. And the Red Dragonflight, they think, you know what? We need an uncorrupted Black Dragon. And so Rhea has a Black Dragon imprisoned, stealing her eggs. She then has us go around, bringing her like whelpling corpses and more eggs and yada yada yada. We also find a bit of Titan technology. And bada bing bada boom, a little bit of magic in there. We create something unique, something special. We create the first uncorrupted Black Dragon egg in millennia. Now, this is before we knew about Ebonhorn, right? Ebonhorn was first, but this was before we knew about Legion. And this little whelpling egg was then taken by the Red Dragonflight. And Refeon was inside, but he could already hear the Red Dragon scheming and what they wanted from him and how they wanted to control him. And Refeon was like, nah, that's not gonna happen. So the moment that he broke out of his egg, he was already a menace. And if you've never done the Rogue Legendary questline, Fangs of the Father, if it's still available, I would highly recommend to check it out. Because he starts breaking legs. But then he does what they did want him to do, which is be an uncorrupted Black Dragon. So he takes care of the corruption within his flight, and he works on trying to fight against the Void and the Old Gods. They kind of forgot about that during Dragonflight, but hey, you know, can't win them all, I suppose. And this is where we helped create Refeon. Then there's also Uldaman, and Uldaman is like a Titan facility. And inside we find beings like Arcadus. Now, Arcadus is not necessarily a bad guy. It's just Arcadus was having a very long nap. And we woke him up and he's like, how dare you? So the idea is Old Gods imprisoned. One Old God in Ulduar is called Yogg-Saron, and Yogg-Saron really wanted to break out. And so he created something called the Curse of Flesh. Curse of Flesh infects the Titan Forge like Arcadus and the Earthen and the Mechanomes and all that. And the Curse of Flesh, it makes them more vulnerable to the Old Gods' corruption. It actually makes them fleshy, makes them mortal. It's not a good thing. So they're like, oh my god, what do we do? Now these three, Iron-Aya, Arcadus, and Keeper Tyr, they had uncovered that Keeper Loken had been corrupted by Yogg-Saron, and that is how the Curse of Flesh got into the machinery, but they needed evidence. So they took the discs of Norgannon. These discs were meant to record all the history on Azeroth forever. So they took that evidence out of Ulduar and they started running, right? And Loken was like, oh my god! If the Titans find out what I've done, they're gonna punish me. And so Loken was like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? From the darkness, a whisper came. You know, when you all were still being good guys and fighting against the Old Gods, you kinda imprisoned two very powerful Kafraks. What if... Now, I'm not saying that you should, but what if you unleash those Kafraks and have them kill Keeper Tyr? That could be fun. Just saying. And so Keeper Loken unleashed these Kafraks, and they went after Tyr, and Tyr was like, Iron-Aya, Arcadus, you two go! I'll hold the line! I got this! So he sacrificed himself, which is why we call it Tirisfal. Tyr, his fall, right? That's where he died, which blew up. And the interesting thing about these Kafraks is that one of them ended up in the tomb with Keeper Tyr. And during Legion, there were 3 artifact quest lines that were connected as a singular story, which is really cool. Would recommend to check it out because it's connected to War Within. There is the Arms Warrior artifact called Stromgarde. Then there's the Shadow Priest artifact called Xal'atath. And then there's the Holy Paladin artifact called the Silver Hand. Those 3 storylines go into the same place, except they go after each other. And they are connected to that storyline. Then the second part, the second Kafraks, was able to run away a little bit longer, died, and then Xal'atath had a troll make blood sacrifices in order to resurrect that creature. That creature comes back to life, is then taken out by the trolls and dies and is buried underneath Zulaman. And, well, I'm sure that's fine. I'm sure that won't come into play later. Meanwhile, back to Arcadus and Iron-Aya, they had like the whole Curse of Flesh thing going on. And they kind of just chilled inside of Uldaman. They put themselves in stasis. Some of the Earthen that came out were like Trogs, some of them were the dwarves, but mainly they're just chilling in there, trying not to be taken over by the Curse of Flesh. Release them. It's little treats. I know, right? Loch Modan. Oh god, I have no stories for Loch Modan. Dwarf lands, I guess. Do I have a story for Loch Modan? I don't think I have. It's just the place where you kind of go. Is there anything happen in Loch Modan? Do we know why Refion's eyes are uniquely red, by the way? Because that makes it easier to gaze into them and dream away. Oh, Refion. Is this going to be another Winter Spring where I'm just going to be like, I don't know? It's the place that I would run through if I had to do the Wetlands run between Darnassus and Idaforge. It's the place where in the Cataclysm cutscene the dam breaks apart and the water rushes out. Like this place, this used to be water. And there used to be like a dam here, but then Deathwing broke it. It's a bit of a dick move, to be honest, but he did. There was part of the Profession questline. No, the Sleeping Bag questline here from Season of Discovery. Which was a really cool questline, not gonna lie. I just never really did anything with it. Why haven't I got the Brewfest Ram Mount while I got the Brewfest Coda Mount 15 years ago? I need a retcon for this one. Yeah. Zoval did it. But don't worry about it. Oh, God. Ow! Don't worry about it. The dwarves got this. Oh! Tendril Span. That's around here, right? Varian in the comics did a battle at the Tendril Span against the Dark Islands, who tried to ambush them, I guess. That's a thing, right? Yeah, that's enough. We can go now. It was in Wetlands on the way to Arafi. Yeah, it was here. But the Wetlands are right here, right? Yeah, no. Magni's Honor Guard doing a masterclass on Dwarven Sass, a bit of the Shattering novel. All right. Interesting. Well, here we have the Wetlands. Named emptily so, because it is very wet. Here we also have... I mean, I don't know if we go actually in the Twilight Highlands or not. Ah, we do. Okay, so we're not allowed to talk about that. But it's like directly there is Grimbatol. So you gotta imagine that if, you know, if this is Idaforge, right? Idaforge, then Grimbatol is not that far away. Same with Redridge Mountains. They're nice, neatly together. In the Wetlands, one of my fondest memories is trying to make it from Darnassus all the way to Idaforge and then Stormwind. The so-called Wetlands Death Run. Because what would happen is, when I started playing, a buddy of mine showed me the classic trailer. And, like, cool. I want to play WoW. I was hooked when I saw the dwarf with the bear. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I could play as a hunter. People have to deal with my bear, and it would be a big benefit, right? But then I checked in on the character creation screen, and I read, like, oh yeah, if you're a night elf, you get, like, a speed increase when you're dead. And I was like, huh, well, I do expect to be dead quite a lot, so that's a really beneficial thing. So I made a character that ended up in Darnassus, not knowing that when he was a human mage, we wouldn't find each other for a very long time. Not until he was like, I got you, I'll come carry you, and I'll take you into a new place of the zone. Wetlands was all my girlfriend's nicknames. Well, there you go. Damn. Oh! I see the name Raptor Rich. So, once upon a time, Ronin had to go fight in Grimbatol, and I believe this was in the novel Night of the Dragon. And that is when we discovered that Ronin was able to bring together a raptor army that was willing to fight for him. Which was really cool. And it never happened ever again. But not gonna lie, I kind of wish that I could make a raptor army happen. Ronin was amazing and deserved far more story in the game, Blizzard Entertainment. Just throwing it out there. We got some Dragon Maw. So the Dragon Maw, we've spoken earlier about how Deathwing was able to make the Dragon Soul, right? And the Dragon Soul was able to do immense amount of damage to the other dragons. And after the War of the Ancients, they took the Dragon Soul away from Deathwing. But then what? Because the dragons couldn't wield it, what are we going to do with it? So they decided, in their infinite wisdom, to hide it beneath the earth. Even though Deathwing is the aspect of earth. But, you know, they put charms on it, and they put, like, one Dragon Guard on it. What was going to happen? You know, they put such powerful spells on it that no magic from Azeroth was ever going to be able to break it. Wouldn't you know it, the Dark Portal opened up, and magic not from Azeroth showed up. And Deathwing Deathwing was like, that's interesting. Now, I can't wield my beloved Dragon Soul, but what if I guide these hordes to the Dragon Soul and they do the thing? So he started showing them visions and dreams, and eventually they do go right out. They find the location where the Dragon Soul was hidden, and they come up with a plan to enslave Alexstrasza and the Red Dragonflights, add their power to the Horde, force them to ride out in battle for the Horde. And they managed to do it. Alexstrasza did not plan on their magics being able to get through their barriers, did not plan on this happening, on the orcs knowing how to wield the Dragon Soul. How could she, right? So, with Alexstrasza enslaved, the other dragons could not strike out out of fear what they would do to her queen. At that point, they forced Alexstrasza to breed to make more dragons. As well as, when she didn't obey, which is one of the more darker storylines that they've done, they went into her prison in Grimbetal. Yes. And they took one of her eggs, and they smeared, like, the yolk on her face. Now, you gotta imagine, Alexstrasza is the life binder. The aspect of life. Imagine one of her children murdered in front of her eyes, and then their remains smeared on her face. It's kind of fucked. But they did. And so, the dragons obeyed, Alexstrasza obeyed, the dragons were created, and they would show up in High Elven lands and cause massive damage to the Alliance. Manifil Harbor, Arthas Manifil and the Manifil family. No porn, she like X. No, they did need to mate. So, we don't know the intricate details as to how they make the X, but they did need the males to have some part in there. And we also know that a Deathwing that was mating with his dragons, he became such a behemoth and such a burning creature that the ones that he mated with, they were ended scarred and dead. There was only one who really survived, which was Sinfaria, and now she survived with ever-burning scars on her face and on her body, and it drove her to madness. So, yeah. We don't know the intricate details as to how dragons mate, but we do know that there's some intercourse that takes place. Yes. So here we go into the Twilight Highlands. I'm now actually wondering, is it always called the Twilight Highlands? So here we got Grimbetal, the same place where darkness was unleashed by Mudgut, and the Wildhammers had to abandon it because, you know, it was uninhabitable. The dwarves still stuck inside there. They were transformed into the Skarden. And if I remember right, this was the place where the Dragon Maw was like holding Alexstrasza prisoner. Because at the end, if you ever paid attention to like the final boss where you fight in Grimbetal, you can see like dragon claw marks on the walls and chains in the round of the room, which is kind of sick. Flying out here, we have the remnants of the Dragon Maw clan that have like the chain of the Dragon Soul, and the chain is even powerful enough to still have some dominance over the dragons. This is also where we got the Bastion of Twilight, which is the raid where we take on Cho'Gall and the Twilight Hammer clan and whatnot. So a lot more has been added these days, so forgive me if I forget a bit of pieces. On Draenor, there are something called the Pale Orcs. And the Pale Orcs got in touch with the darkness of the void, and they started to learn about, like, the Hour of Twilight. And this was a prophesized thing from Team Old God, in which, like, the world, the universe, blah, 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 will all be dipped in darkness, everybody done, over with, GG. And they really wanted this to happen. Cho'Gall as well, the ogre Cho'Gall, started to listen more to these whispers into the darkness, and he became quite the herald. And so when they stepped foot on Azeroth, a planet infested with the Old Gods, the whispers, the assurance, the almost sense of destiny was like a ripple through Cho'Gall. It was like, oh, we're gonna have fun on this planet. And it was set up in Blackrock Mountain, as I explained earlier. In Blackrock Mountain, there was the whole idea of this works to the benefit of the Old Gods, right? The fuck is this? The Kras works. Is this new? Huh. And so Cho'Gall would go about with the idea of, okay, we're gonna bring about the Hour of Twilight. It's gonna be great. And that mainly played out with the Cataclysm, right? Deathwing breaking out of the world, N'Zoth signing his paychecks. It was like the big place. trying to think. Because originally, in the comics, there was this whole storyline with Medan. And Medan is the son of Medivh. It butchers the story of the Midgardian. And thankfully, they made the decision of retconning it. And Medan has been removed from the storyline. However, there were also events with his mother, Garona. There were events with Cho'Gall, the old god K'Thun. They tried to bring back the old god. There were events with Egwin. Like, Egwin died in Medan's storyline, and now Medan's storyline is gone. So, is Egwin still dead? Who the heck he knows? So I'm trying to remember what exactly Cho'Gall did. And if I remember from the Chronicles, the altered version is that... he basically still goes around trying to bring about the Outer Twilight, doing bad things. I think he goes to Dire Maul in the Cataclysm questing, and Garona, like, tracks him down and whatnot. Because he tries to recruit the ogres of Dire Maul to his side. Then, for our experience, I believe that the Horde has a very badass questline that takes him into the Twilight Highlands, where the War Chief Garrosh joins them, and they get, like, attacked by Twilight Hammer members. And at that point, oh god, that's some old speculation. At that point, Garrosh, like, jumps off the ship, makes a sacrificial play, and just starts taking heads everywhere. And from that moment, people started to wonder, because the whole bombing and, you know, what happened to our war chief, did they replace Garrosh? They wondered if Garrosh was replaced in this questline. That is how much of a departure from his character it was, right? Like, we speculated about Kil'jaeden, they speculated about, is Garrosh replaced? There's a lot going on there. There's also, I think this one is then Alliance. There's a Dwarven Wedding. Where it's revealed that also darkness and corruption. Were the Titans in Outland or Draenor? Not the way that we have it on Azeroth, but... Oh, hang on. So, what's interesting is that inside of Draenor there is no World Soul. But the world was discovered by the Titans, and when they found it, the world was taken over by the domain of life, by nature. So in order to bring some balance, in order to bring some order, they made something called Gigantic Stone Monster in order to fight against the nature creatures. And the big nature creature and the big stone monster, they take each other out, but their remnants are still around, which is why you have something like the Grunn and the Ogron and the Ogre and the Orcs. They're all descendant from that massive earth creature. Whereas the natures, you have something like the Janissar and the plant people, in order to bring a bit more balance to Draenor. So the Orcs are still connected to the creation of the Titans, right? Yeah, for the life of me, I can picture the image from Chronicles, but I cannot picture their name. But yeah, that is how it happened. So no World Soul to be taken care of, but definitely some Titanic influences in there. Nah, wasn't a Botani. Nah, there was a big, yeah, something, yeah. There was a big stone creature that was made to fight with. Was it not just Gorgrond? Was that not just his name? Something in that direction. Yeah, so basically the stone creatures, as they evolved, they would have something like the ogres, right? More fleshy creatures. But then also something like the orcs, which float in there. And in here, there's a quest line where we get devoured. And then we wake up and we don't get devoured. It's kind of cool. This quest line is kind of cool. I always like this one. Even though this looks like a butthole. Whee! The Colossals were the ancestors of the Magnaron and the Grunn, and by extension the Ogron, Ogre-lords, Ogres, and Orcs. Maybe. Grond! Yeah! It was called Grond. Grond was a massive elemental giant created by Titan Agramar to defeat the Evergrove and to maintain balance over Primal Draenor. There you go. Orcs Draenei thing is a bit depressing. It is one of the far darker storylines, especially since Garona half Orcan is still a thing. Yeah. Yes, it is. As well as like Nobundo's story, Unbroken. Yeah, it's one of the more darker stories that they got in a while. Experience, by the way, we're level 37, and we've literally not hit a single button. I don't have a single talent. I mean, not literally hit a single button. We've not done any fighting. We're level 37. And we're just cruising the world. How cool is that? Right. Swamp of Sorrows. Well, as the name implies, the swamp is really sad. And we've spoken earlier, like the main event in the zone is the temple. And in this temple, we have those Atalai priests that were desperately trying to bring back Hakar. The green dragonflight, Ysera, smacked the temple back into the water, which is why we call it the Sunken Temple. Left some guardians behind, but over time, something called the Emerald Nightmare. Yeah. Something called the Nightmare took over. And the Nightmare originates from Yaxaron. It originates from Fendrel Stackhelm planting too many happy little trees. It originates from the Emerald Dream being infected by the corruption of the old gods. As the name implies, it does indeed give nightmares. And creatures like the green dragons, who are very much connected to the Emerald Dream realm, they were very vulnerable to it, which is why the emboss of the temple, that was like Ysera's consort, and they're full-on stuck in the nightmare. What's really cool is that you would get their trinkets, and you get two options. It was called the Essence of Iranicus. And the trinket would unleash AoE gas clouds, which would deal damage. But every time you used it, you would be whispered by the Essence of Iranicus, going like, "Ah! It burns! Please set me free! Stop my torment! Ah!" So, what you could do is you could take the trinket and turn it in and get like a quest reward. Or you hold on to it and use it every option that you had, which I really liked. Eventually, in the books, the storyline would be somewhat resolved. This is in the novel Stormrage. Hopefully, because I usually confuse Wolfheart with Stormrage. But in the novel Stormrage, we would find out about the Emerald Nightmare Rage. We would find out about Stackhelm's corruption. We would find out that Malfurion was slowly being turned into a tree. And he would wake up and he would deal with the corruption. And, yeah. You monster. Yeah. So, yeah. Add-on that I use is called... I should make a command, to be honest. It is called... Universal Explorer. And my realm is Tedekar. Tedekar EU. Void Lords are the masters of the Old Gods. Is Old Gods related to some decay elementals? So, the origin of the Old Gods, as we know it right now, is that... In the Warcraft universe, you have these cosmic realms, right? You got the realm of light and the realm of death, and you got the realm of the void. And in the realm of the void, there are creatures called the Void Lords. And the Void Lords, they saw the Titans go around the universe, waking up more of their kinds, and they were envious of their power. They looked upon the Titans and they were like, I want a piece of that. And so, they tried to corrupt the Titans. But they found out that a Titan, when they're born, when they're grown, they're not really corruptible in that way. So, what they did was do what the Titans did, which is set the sights on those unborn Titans. So the Void Lords, they pooled their powers together, and they squeezed and wished really hard, and they were able to manifest the Old Gods in the physical universe. But like the Titans, they had no idea which planet was infested, which planet had like a spirit inside. So they were like, whatever, we'll just hit as many as we can. So all over the universe, Old Gods were floating around and landing on planets. So some planets are infected by the Old Gods but have no spirit inside. Some planets have a spirit inside but are not infected by the Old Gods. And then there was Azeroth. And Azeroth was a bingo! Got him! Yay! Inside of Azeroth, there was a spirit. Old Gods crash on her. Old Gods enslave the Elemental Lords. And the whole thing happens. So in essence, Old Gods are created by the Void Lords, which is why a lot of people are speculating about Xal'atath and will we see the return of the Old Gods or whatnot. And me personally, I'm ready for the next step. I'm ready to take this relationship into the next level. I want beyond Old Gods. I dealt with Old Gods. I want the next thing. I don't necessarily need to take on the Void Lords. That might be a bit much, but I would love to go into the domain of the Void Lords. Because in my mind, and it's always better in your mind than in reality, but in my mind, a eldritch horror realm would be amazing. Now, To already clarify a bit of the confusion might follow, the term Void Lord has kind of been transformed over the years. So back in the Burning Crusade, we also had things like... the last one, Pandemonius, right? This infamous Void Lord is also known as the Duke of Chaos, the Eater of Nations and World Slayer. Pandemonius was one of the commanders serving under Dimensius. So this is also mentioned as a Void Lord. But I think what happened is that over time they had some more changes when it comes to the story. If I had to give it a lore reason, I think this is just a teeny tiny little bit of what the Void Lords were able to manifest into our universe, and that the real thing is far bigger, powerful out there. But that is personal interpretation. Did Terenas actually do anything useful for all the mentions of his being a beloved king? Lothar and Val brought the alliance together, and Val made the paladins, then Warcraft 3 ignored Medea's warnings, and then before that he made internment camps and drove Gilneas away, left Alterac in ruins. Did he do anything to earn everybody's love, or is it just a case of roasting the glasses for the survivors of Lordaeron? King Terenas did good for Lordaeron. Like, Lordaeron was an absolute powerhouse compared to the other houses amongst the alliance, or amongst the human kingdoms, I would say. Dalaran was on par, but Dalaran was like magical. Lordaeron was one of the bigger ones. So, in that case, Terenas did really well at like leading the kingdom. It was prosperous. They loved their prince. People were happy, right? So he did well about that. As well as, in the matters of political cases, he was not corrupted as the others. Yes, he was dicked over by Deathwing infiltrating court. And he wasn't, you know, immune to magics or whatnot. But he wasn't an asshole like Greymane who was like, I'll just build a wall and let you all suffer. He wasn't an asshole like the Arathis who were like selling their people out to the orcs. Nah, he was definitely standing there. And when the Orcish horde rolled out of Quel'Thalas and made ready to siege Lordaeron, who was there on the battlements, if not our boy, King Terenas Menethil II. Thankfully, we also had like the reinforcement of Trellian, but he was definitely, you know, ready to take on the battle. So Val has learned quite a bit, and now must learn more as we go into the magical lands of Quel'Thalas. Here we got the home of the High Elves / Blood Elves. Times change and all that. Hi, Lorfmar.
The beauty of Eversong endures.
Yaha.
I greet you on behalf of Silvermoon.
Hello.
The light of the Sunwell be with you.
So, this place. Right. We've spoken about the Night Elves, War of the Ancients, exiling their people because they couldn't kill all of them with the whole, you know, there were too many that still wanted to use magic. So they were like, we can't murder everyone, right? And so, exile was the way to go. They took with them a vial filled with water from the original Well of Eternity. And those Night Elves, those Highborn mainly, but those Night Elves, they set out. And during their travels, they saw a bit of a change. No longer were they focused on the night, they were more like during the day. And, you know, they kind of wanted to step away from those smelly Night Elves that sent them away. So, they started to call themselves the High Elves. And they started to live during the day and were more connected to the sun and all that. Eventually, they ended up here, and they made themselves a neat little Sunwell. But, of course, they were not the first ones into this land. There were also the trolls, specifically more the Amani trolls, who were not happy with these elves. They were like, hey, the fuck? I live there. And the elves were like, nah, I live here. And they were like, nah, I live here. And they're like, nah, I live here. So they had a bit of a conflict going on, but, you know, the elves had magic. And they had runestones, and the trolls were not powerless, like the trolls at the Loa and whatnot, but they weren't exactly able to kick the elves out of these lands. But the war wasn't exactly one-sided either. So, eventually, the elves would see something rather interesting happen. Remember how Keeper Tyr ran away from Ulduar? And, the Curse of Flesh and whatnot. So, the Vrykul are also Titanforged creatures. And the Vrykul were turning into the humans. And their King Yimmeron was like, ew! You got some ugly babies! Kill them all! But the parents were like, I don't want to kill my children. I love my children. What do we do? So they were like, let us send over these children to the legendary lands where Keeper Tyr is going with his Vrykul. You know, I'm sure that their destiny will be a lot better. And so they did. And over time, those humans, right, the Vrykul turned into the humans, they would settle and they would create something called the Kingdom of Arator. And if you've watched the recent War Within videos, you're familiar with this because it's very, part of the story right now. But in essence, we would see Thoradin of Arator, the man, the myth, the legends, realize that man weak when divided, man strong when together. And he would go around uniting all these individual little human clans and he would make his Kingdom of Arator. And he did this by embracing religion, embracing the light. He did this by bonking them on the heads, marriages and whatnot. And so they would make this kingdom. And the High Elves noticed this. The High Elves were like, look at those strapping humans. They sure look powerful. They could be a good ally on the battlefield. And so they offered an allegiance to the humans. And the humans realized, those Omani trolls could be a big problem for us as well. This allegiance is not bad. Let's see what we can do. But not for free. They wanted the High Elves to teach them in the ways of magic. 100 of the humans were trained in their ways. And together, they ended the so-called Troll Wars. They delivered such a devastating...
We will persevere.
Devastating blow to the trolls, to the Omani trolls.
The reckoning is at hand.
One that they wouldn't really recover from. And from that point on, humans and elves were buddy-buddy. They celebrated hardcore. There's a reason why half-elves exist. They just won a war, and so they got together. I actually found it, I think. I wanted to show you one really cool part about Quel'Thalas. They have a sweatshop. Yep. This is, they have Leper Gnome sweatshop. Did you know that? Yep. Leper Gnomes sweatshop. In the middle of Quel'Thalas. Yep. Yep. Well, there, you think Zoval's bad. Well, So, what do I want to say? Right, so the Omani trolls got their asses kicked, something that they didn't really recover from. And again, under Zul'Aman, there is that Kafrux, right? And from their union, High Elves and humans, they secured their lands. So, the High Elves of Quel'Thalas, they were chilling. And they promised to the line of Arator, of Thoradin of Arator, that if and when they would ever need the aid of the elves would be there for them. Think very much Lord of the Rings, right? Like, bring us the sword and we will blah, blah, blah. Which is why, many years later, I stole his chair. This is my chair now. Which is why, many years later, when the Horde invaded, the Alliance of Lordaeron set sail. Oh, sorry, the Stormwind set sail to Lordaeron. And Numenlothar showed up. And Numenlothar being connected to that Thoradin line. And he was able to call upon the aid of the elves. But not massively an aid of the elves. You see, the elves, led by Anastarian Sunstrider, they were chilling. They hadn't had a real threat to the lands for quite a while. And, they were like, you know what? I don't think the Horde is really a big threat. And now, in their defense, there weren't a lot of people who believed into the idea of the Horde. Imagine an alien invading force that just suddenly shows up and is like, oh yeah, we need to unite all of us together, otherwise we're going to be wiped out. Like, that is a tall tale to tell, right? But some amongst them, like Illyria Windrunner, they knew better. They could tell, like, nah, this is not fancy, this is not fairy tales, we need to unite, we need to take action right now, and she was right. Because she lost her parents, and they brought a lead off to the Orcish Horde invasion and the Omani Troll Union, because the Orcs actually got the aid of the Omani. Because the Omani at that point, big old hatred towards the elves and the humans and all that. So yeah, eventually the war progressed, and the Orcs would make the elves realize that they were indeed a threat, as at that point in time they'd enslaved the Red Dragons. They were knock knock, who's there? Red Dragons. Bleh. So the whole forest was on fire. The magical bubbles kept the city safe, but it was definitely a spicy, dicey fight. So Zul'jin was allied with the Horde, with Orgrim Doomhammer, led them through the lands, told them where to go. But eventually Orgrim was like, yeah, we can wipe out these elves anytime we want. I kind of want to secure the war. So he pulled his forces and they went to Lordaeron, which Zul'jin did not appreciate. Like, which is why when you look at the Zul'Aman Gods of Zul'Aman trailer, Zul'jin is like, F the Horde and F the Alliance. You can all suck it. You all betrayed us. The Omani trolls have done dirty. And not entirely wrong. So, the High Elves got lucky enough to survive the Orcish Horde invasion, but not without loss. Not without great loss. As well as Illyria Windrunner would step through the Dark Portal, Sylvanas would become their High Ranger, and then more threats would show up. More threats would show up. Thank you, Vlad. More threats would show up in the form of the one, the only, you know him, you love him, Arthas Menethil! What happened, you wonder? What happened? What happened? Organ pieced out because Gul'dan was being Gul'dan. Okay, now I need to double check it all, because there was indeed Gul'dan the betrayal, but what I remember is that Gul'dan's betrayal had him pull back on the attack on Lordaeron because they were being overwhelmed and the support from Gul'dan was not going to happen, as well as Orgrim decided to send Rend and Maim after Gul'dan to bring him to justice, which would have him less forces. So not only did Gul'dan pull out his ogres and like the Twilight Hammer clan, like a whole bunch of forces, Orgrim was then also necessary to send like forces after Gul'dan to bring him to justice, because honor, which in turn allowed the Alliance of Lordaeron to repel the Horde invasion at Lordaeron. But I'm think, and now you're making me double check. I'm pretty sure the Quel'Thalas was pulled out because Orgrim was like, this is taking too long. With the runestones desecrated, the Horde's Death Knights and other spellcasters regained their powers. Orgrim's forces stormed towards Quel'Thalas' capital, Silvermoon City. They terrorized the countryside, pillaging settlements and cutting down every elf that they found. King Anasterion called on his greatest generals to stop the Horde's advance. Elf Magi and Rangers spread across Quel'Thalas to resist Orgrim's forces, but they did not have to fight alone for long. Turellian and Illyria soon arrived with half of the Alliance army. While Turellian organized the soldiers and launched attacks against the Hordes, Illyria met with Anasterion in Silvermoon City. She urged the Elf King to pledge his force to the Alliance, but he needed little convincing. Anasterion was furious about the Horde's assault. Not since the ancient troll wars had the elves died in such numbers. Not since that terrible time had the lands been so defiled. Humans and elves had once banded together to save their respective kingdoms from oblivion. Now they would do so again. The Alliance would have the full support and backing of Quel'Thalas. Though the Alliance and the Elves were now unified in purpose, any hope that they had of a quick victory vanished in smoke and fire. The Red Dragons had come. After months of hard work, the Dragonmaw orcs had learned how to ride their winged captives in battle. Blah blah blah, blah blah blah, firestorm, blah blah blah, shield against the fire. Get a barrier. The Horde smashed against the shield again and again, but the barrier did not give way. Even the Red Dragon's mystical fire could not breach it. Orgrim's patience was wearing thin. Destroying the High Elven stronghold had never been his priority. Lordaeron's capital was. Though Orgrim has not yet satisfied the Amani Pact, he had accomplished other things in Quel'Thalas. The gifted Ogre Magi now served the Horde. The Dragonmaw clan had finally brought the bulk of the winged servants to bear in battle. The Horde has also dealt a grave blow to Quel'Thalas, one that would take the elves many years to recover from. Orgrim began planning the next stage of his campaign. He would need a route. Yeah. So, Orgrim just got frustrated that the elves were able to put up such magical barriers, and it just took far too long for his taste to take Quel'Thalas. Because for him, taking Quel'Thalas was not winning the war. It was fulfilling what he had promised the Amani. And since they abandoned them, like, F you, Hordes! Yeah, he sent, if I remember the events proper, Orgrim goes to Lordaeron, and they get, like, ready to fight Lordaeron, and then the betrayal of Gul'dan is revealed. And in a play of honor over victory, Orgrim decides, knowing full well that if he does, that they're gonna have to fall back to Blackrock Mountain, but he decides, send our forces after Gul'dan to make him pay, to punish him, right? So I'm thinking it was Rend and Maim Blackhand that were sent over to the Tomb of Sargeras, and they didn't even have to do anything, because Gul'dan died in the tomb, if you remember. And Orgrim had to pull back to Blackrock Mountain, where still the Horde could have won the war. They could have won the war, was it not for, like, Turellian's connection to the light or whatnot. He said he broke his honor to Zul'jin, but sent orcs off to Gul'dan for honor. Very weird code of honor. I mean, it's the same code of honor which defines, like, if we kill each other in battle, as long as we do it from the front, it's fine. As long as we We can invade whatever lands we want, but just gotta make sure that we kill from behind, not hit from the back, because that is dishonorable. And it's like, huh. Yeah, okay. Unfortunately, they took Sourfang really far when it comes to the whole honor storyline. Okay, so... story time! Back to Quel'Thalas. So we've done the Horde invasion, Orgrim pulling his forces away, all the good stuff. The elves had saved the day, and for a while things were chill. But then, the rise of Arthas Menethil. And this is again related to the Orc storyline. So, back on Draenor, we had an Orc called Ner'zhul. And Ner'zhul was the first who was like whispered at by Kil'jaeden and whatnot, and whispered in his ear. They used the image of his beloved mate, Rokan, and they convinced Ner'zhul, like, Ner'zhul, bring the clans together, form the Horde, kill the Draenei. And Ner'zhul did. Now, you might say, poor Ner'zhul, but nah, Ner'zhul was also a bit power hungry, and he liked the status, but eventually Ner'zhul found out that he was being manipulated, and he was like, uh-oh, I gotta stop this. But by that time, his apprentice Gul'dan took over. So, okay. First time, Horde got defeated. Second time, the Dark Portal. The second time, Ner'zhul rose up again. Because the first time, Gul'dan died at the Tomb of Sargeras. And the second time, they came back to Azeroth. Not to conquer Azeroth. They already realized, like, okay, the defenses are way too powerful. Instead, what we'll do is we'll gather some powerful artifacts from this planet. And with those artifacts, we can make portals to different worlds, right? If we can't take Azeroth, we could just portal to different worlds, right? We can take those. And a little side note, if you take a portal from a mage or from anybody, you basically step through the Twisting Nether. It's basically opening up a tear in the Twisting Nether to bring two planes of existence really close to each other, right? It's important because Ner'zhul did his thing, but not without resistance. The Alliance of Lordaeron stepped through the Dark Portal. They tried to stop Ner'zhul, and they nearly succeeded. Except he was still able to open up those portals. So all across Draenor, portals started to open up. And you gotta keep in mind, at this point, Draenor was already corrupted and half destroyed, and these portals did not help. Massive explosions and blasting, and it turned Draenor into Outland as we see it today. And our boy Ner'zhul, he stepped through the portal thinking he was gonna go to the paradise. He was gonna abandon the hordes. He was just gonna find his own pretty little life. And Ner'zhul was done. However, what Ner'zhul did not count on was that he was going to end up right in front of Kil'jaeden. And Kil'jaeden was not happy with Ner'zhul. Because Ner'zhul had tried to stop him. Ner'zhul had tried to betray him. Ner'zhul was not Kil'jaeden's favorite little orc anymore. And so, Kil'jaeden took Ner'zhul's spirits and started to tear him apart like a little piece of paper, only to then reform his spirit again and do it all over. Kil'jaeden is a petty bitch, and he will punish you for your failure. Until Ner'zhul's mind was nearly shattered and broken, and Kil'jaeden made him an offer. Listen, Ner'zhul, I could do this forever, but I got an offer. You become my Lich King, and I will stop. And Ner'zhul accepted. Obviously he accepted. Come on now. So, the Dreadlords presented the Helmet of Domination and Frostmourne. Which they always did, by the way. It's not different. They always did. And they put Ner'zhul's spirit in there, and they sent him off to Azeroth. Why? Why, for the same plan every time. To weaken Azeroth and have the Legion invade it and destroy it. Yay! So Ner'zhul goes, lands in Northrend. The Lich King has arrived, and slowly but surely his necromantic powers start to spread out because he's become extremely powerful. He's been transformed as a spirit. He's in the Helmet of Domination, and he realizes, like, oh, cool. I can resurrect things. I can. It's like you can see it. Thank you. I can bring undead back to life. I can control people. This is kind of cool. And Ner'zhul started to whisper and manipulate, and this is how he got in touch with someone like Kel'Thuzad. Kel'Thuzad was already into necromancy. He was part of the Kirin Tor at Dalaran, and he followed these whispers of Ner'zhul all the way to Northrend. But by the time that he got to Northrend, he was given a tour of Naxxramas, and, you know, he realized, okay, I like necromancy as much as the next guy, but this is a bit far. But by the time that he reached the Frozen Throne, and he got in front of Ner'zhul the Lich King, Quel'Thuzad realized, you know, I'm in too deep. And with a being like the Lich King, death is not a certainty either. It's either dive into power, give yourself fully, or, you know, eternal torment. And so he decided to sign up with the Lich King and become the lovely Lich, as we all know him as today. There was also the War of the Spider, where the Lich King took on, like, the Nerubians and resurrected someone like Nubarak. There's the Sen Lane, but that was more of Arthas later. There's a whole bunch of necromancy in Northrend. And also Frostmourne. So then, we know that Ner'zhul was not exactly bestest buddies with Kil'jaeden or the Burning Legion. So while the Dreadlords were keeping an eye on a little Lich King and on a little orc, Ner'zhul was scheming and plotting and trying to get himself out of this predicament, trying to get himself a bit of freedom. But first, he was going to play along with the Burning Legion and do what they wanted him to do. So with Quel'Thuzad at his side, they created like the Cult of the Damned. They worked on spreading the plague across the lands of Lordaeron. The plague that would turn people into undead and then serve the Lich King. Things were pretty bad. But don't worry. Don't you worry about it. There was a shiny light for the people of Lordaeron. There was a shiny light amongst the human kingdom. There was the beloved Prince Arthas Menethil. And Arthas, he was golden-haired. I should have brought my wig. He was golden-haired and fair and beautiful, and people loved him. When he was given a slave girl, he politely declined. He loved Jaina Proudmoore very much, but he got cold feet when they were talking about children. You know, Arthas Menethil, paladin extraordinaire, and Arthas was put under pressure. Arthas saw his beloved kingdom fall to darkness, and there are many observations and opinions and whatever you can unleash upon the character of Arthas, but point being, Ner'zhul slowly but surely pushed him to the dark side. There was this really cool story. Like, you see this horse that my smelly Zoval's riding? This horse is called Invincible. This horse, once upon a time, belonged to Arthas Menethil. Arthas loved this horse. And one day, as he was riding out with a horse, they made a jump, they slipped over a patch of ice, and, well, Invincible broke his legs. And it wasn't good. It was not good. Arthas couldn't call upon the lights to heal him. And so he had to put his horsey down. And from that day on, he was shattered. But don't worry. Don't you worry about it. In his ears, there was a voice whispering to him, I can bring him back. I can bring him back. All you gotta do is become my servant. So part of it was Invincible. Part of it was also, you know, his entire kingdom burning around him. Part of it was vengeance. And vengeance must never be part of what we do, Arthas. So Arthas Menethil was on the road of damnation. And the Dreadlord Mal'Ganis haunted him to Northrend. The Purge of Stratholme, where the people were eating the food that was infected with the plague. And Arthas was like, oh no, what do we do? And to this day, this is still one of the more debated moments in Warcraft's history. Because the question is, what other choice did Arthas have than Purge Stratholme? And the fun thing is, if you go through the Warcraft 3 campaign, later on you find out that the mages of the Kirin Tor have the power to make a magical field that kills all undead. So that is an option. Like, there were options, but it's always easy for us to look at it from top-down view and judge that moment with Arthas Menethil. For Arthas, he made the calls that he think that he had to make, but even he was not certain about the choices. Which was reflected when he was bashing the skulls in of babies and mothers and citizens. The light started to flicker on his hammer. His conviction started to waver. But he kept on going, because he had to put up a brave face for those soldiers that he let into the whole purge thing. So eventually Mal'Ganis is like, ha ha ha, you will never catch me. You gotta come to Northrend. And so Arthas did. And there he ran into an old friend, Muradin Bronzebeard. Muradin was doing a bit of an exploration thing. And Muradin was the one who had trained Arthas when he was a wee lad. Arthas was very similar to Anduin in the case that both of them were really sucky at fighting. But Muradin was able to turn Arthas around and actually make him a really good fighter. So he found Muradin, and together they, they joined him on the quest. And they found out about the legend of Frostmourne. Arthas also decided to ignore his father's orders of coming back home, and instead he burned the ships, and he blamed the mercenaries. Arthas was not exactly in a good state of mind, in his defense. He picks up Frostmourne, and from that moment on, he gives up a piece of his soul. He thinks Muradin is dead, and he claims his vengeance. Like, he's able to take out Mal'Ganis the Dreadlord just as the Lich King wanted. Remember, the Lich King doesn't care about the Dreadlords, he wants them gone. So giving Arthas his vengeance was A-okay. And then... good music, man. Woo! And then Arthas returns as a Death Knight in service to the Lich King Ner'zhul. He has become his soldier. He comes home. Of course, the scene that you know where he kneels down in the throne room and says, my son, welcome home. And then he's like, I'm ready, Daddy-o! Succeeding you, father! Chunk! And he kills his own daddy, and he becomes, this whole kingdom must fall. And so I think Uther describes it as your father has ruled this kingdom for like 70 years, and you brought it down in 3 days, something like that. But that was only the beginning. Killing his own dad was only the beginning. Like, the whole kingdom was brought low, people resurrected as ghouls. He then goes on the quest because when he was still a paladin, he had struck down Quel'Thalas, and Quel'Thalas already told him, like, haha, this doesn't mean anything. These stones, by the way, were used to guard the city. They're important for later. And they were also used by the stones similar to like this, by the Horde to make two-headed ogres. But yeah, Arthas had to bring back Quel'Thalas as a lich. So that meant that they had to find his remains, and they had to, like, carry his remains. And in order to carry his remains safely, they were going to need the urn of his father, in which one of the more harder lines were dropped in the storyline, which is Uther asking Arthas, like, what do you want with the ashes of his father? You want to piss on him one last time? And Arthas is like, I didn't know what contained in the urn. I didn't know that the urn had my ashes of my father, which he didn't. The Dreadlords didn't tell him. And if you read Arthas, Rise of the Lich King, the novel, you get a lot more insight into what was Arthas' mind at the time. Why specifically that urn? Probably because it was screwing over Arthas. Probably, but also like an urn of a king or like an urn of the fallen father, or something magical there. But also to mess with Arthas, right? Like, see how far he drops to the dark side, like taking the ashes out of his dad. So he confronts his mentor, Uther the Lightbringer, and kills him. And then he opens up the urn and he tries to throw out the ashes of his father, and the wind rises up. Like, you know how in The Lion King, the wind rises up and they have like this smell happening? Yeah, in this case, the wind rises up and the ashes of his father fly up his nose and his mouth, and he goes... So that happened. There was like one final FU from his father. So, okay, so they got a container. They go pick up Quel'Thalas' remains. But now what? Now they need a magical fount of power to actually bring him back as a lich. And what did you know it? There are the High Elves of Quel'Thalas, who have a beautiful Sunwell. It's been there for centuries now. Millennia. And the High Elves still think that the magical bubbles that protected them against the Horde and the dragons was also going to protect them against Arthas and the Scourge, right? Surely they can hold off against the undead army. So Sylvanas, Windrunner, rides out. She is Ranger General because her sister didn't take the title. She took over. But how do you fight an enemy which every fallen soldier adds to their ranks? Like, I always loved playing the Scourge in Warcraft 3 because, like, the whole Ziggurat situation and, like, the whole resurrection thing is awesome. Necromancers, hell yeah. So how do you fight them? Well, not really, because they're super powerful. So you try to pull back, And Arthas had something up his sleeve. Those runestones that we've been walking by, they're like the keys of the moon or whatever they call it in Warcraft 3 in the campaign. Basically, you need to be an insider to know how to deal with the magical defenses of the High Elves, but they're not impenetrable. If you know what's happening, if you know the right spells, the right magics, you can, in fact, deactivate them. And amongst the High Elves, there was an ambitious man. Darkan? I want to say Kafranatir, but that's the Dreadlord. I'm going to say Darkan. Yes. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure he's called Darkan. And Darkan betrayed his people to Arthas. He, Darkan Drafir. Kafranatir Darkan Drafir. Good job, Rain. Good job. Darkan sold out his people. Darkan is the reason why Quel'Thalas fell that day. Why Arthas the Lich King, why the Scourge took the high home of the High Elves and wiped them, nearly wiped them out. King Anastarian Sunstrider slain, Sylvanas is slain, turned into a Banshee, Kel'Thuzad brought back as a Lich, and the Sunwell is corrupted. And now the High Elves have their prince, Kil'Thuzad Sunstrider, who at the time, I believe, was in Dalaran. And he was quite upset that he was in Dalaran. He was like, I should have been home to protect my home, right? As well as, after that, the Kirantor imprisons Kil'Thuzad, because there is the human... Holy sh... What is he called? Oh, there was that human general, the really racist asshole. I do not remember my name, but he was like one of the last remnants of the Alliance that was still there. All of the rest was wiped out, so he got into Gerithos, thank you. Gerithos was a real dickhead. And he was like one of the last few people left in charge for the Alliance forces, and that's one that Kil'Thuzad had to deal with. So Kil'Thuzad is like imprisoned in Dalaran. Like imagine Kil'Thuzad Sunstrider. He was like Kirantor status. He was awesome. He was a good friend to Dalaran, and they imprisoned him all the same. But that's a whole different story that we'll get to in just a moment. For now, Kil'Thuzad returned home to the home of the High Elves, found their Sunwell to be massively corrupted, and the undead were still roaming the land. As you can see, this whole Dread Scar, this is still from Warcraft 3. This is still from the undead walking the land, slowly marching upon their city. The land, to this day, has not healed, right? It has not healed. So what do? Well, they decide to take a really bad situation and try to turn it into their advantage. Oh, by the way, Lorfmar also lost an eye fighting the undead. Side note. They decide to blow up the Sunwell and take out as many of the undead as they can. And it worked for a bit. But then they realized, oh shit, we're addicted to magic. Uh-oh. And their addiction is described in such a way that... you remember Valera Sanguinar, the one who was fighting with Varian and Brawl Bearmantle in the arena? In that storyline, we actually discovered that the now Blood Elves, in honor of the blood that was spilled from those that were trying to defend their home, in honor of the Fallen, the magical addiction that is passed on to their children is literally passed on through their breast milk. Like their bodies and their whole essence is so infused with magic that it's a generational thing. So Valera, who was cut off from the Sunwell, it's not a situation where they cannot exist without the Sunwell. For example, you might remember the Nightborn. They needed the Nightwell, otherwise they would turn into like withered and they would go away. The Blood Elves could live without the Sunwell, but it was just incredibly painful and incredibly sucky. And so they were like, hey, Kil'Thuzad, could you, what do we do? What do we do? And Kil'Thuzad, as I said, got imprisoned as he was following Gerithos, and Gerithos was doing all kinds of things, and Gerithos was giving him missions that were near impossible. To which Lady Vush showed up, Lady Vush of the Naga. She was like, hey, Kil'Thuzad, you handsome prince, you. Hey, listen, right? That human over there, bit of a racist asshole, but I can help you. And at first, Kil'Thuzad is like, my lady, my honor, I cannot work with you. And she's like, are you sure? Because your people are going to die if you don't. And he's like, I have no choice. It is my honor or my people. And so, obviously, he's not going to die for a Gerithos, is he? And I still don't get Gerithos, but whatever. Kil'Thuzad gets imprisoned, Lady Vush breaks him out, gets him in touch with Illidan Stormrage, and the same Illidan, by the way, who made those vials and was then imprisoned for life. Turns out that life is around 10,000 years, as he had been set free by Tyrande and Malfurion. So Quel'Thas pledged himself to Illidan, and Illidan promises, like, I'll get you people a fix for their addiction. Don't you worry about it. And you just help me out. Now, a really weird part is that in the Black Temple, you know the fight where you fight like the three faces, right? Warlocks would go in there during their Greenfire questline. No, Gedefos wasn't Jaina's dad. No. Dalen Proudmoore was her father. But in the Warlock Greenfire questline, we actually uncover that Illidan had a magical fount of power in the Black Temple, ready to go. He could have fixed the Blood Elves with some magical juices, and he didn't. To which they actively wonder, why didn't he? I don't know. But all the same, Quel'Thas in league with Illidan and Lady Vush. And over time, Quel'Thas would start to resent Illidan. And start to resent, you know, he was being whispered in his ear that Illidan was holding back on him. And he was being whispered in his ear by none other than Kil'jaeden. And so Quel'Thas decided to team up with Kil'jaeden. Which, as you imagine, as the Blood Elves, was not exactly a great situation. We're gonna leave the home of the High Elves. As you can tell, quite a bit of history here. During the Burning Crusade, the Blood Elves would be led by Lord Marfaron. He was Regent Lord, as Quel'Thas was still the prince, you know, the bloodline. Eventually, they were uncovered that Quel'Thas was actually in league with the Kil'jaeden and the Burning Legion, and the Blood Elves were not down with that. They were willing to embrace the Fel, and they were willing to go very far in order to save their way of life, in order to save their kingdom, but they were not willing to sign up with the Burning Legion, not all of them anyways. So they rose up, they disposed of their prince, of Quel'Thas. You might remember fighting him, and then you might remember fighting him again as he came back. So the idea behind that is, when they blew up their Sunwell, when Arthas corrupted it, pieces of the Sunwell were still around. Power of the Sunwell was still around. And this power was collected by the Red Dragon Corielstras, who gave it a human form in order to hide it away. He turned it into Envina Teague. And Envina Teague was a very magical being. So when the Blue Dragon Caligos showed up to investigate what was going on with all this magic, he met Envina, and he could not help but be smitten. You know, Blue Dragon, magic. You're like, oh, Envina, I love you. Eventually, they figure out that Envina is actually the embodiment of the Sunwell. Darkan is not dead at this point. He came back and he tried to eat her or something like that. But Envina realizes, like, I am the Sunwell. Darkan, there's nothing you can do to me. And then the Blood Elves promise that they're going to keep Envina safe. But then Quel'Thas is allied to the Burning Legion, and he claims Envina Teague. So the idea is that he's going to use Envina's power in order to open up a gateway at the Sunwell. So back in the War of the Ancients, they tried to use the Well of Eternity for Sargeras. Now we're going to use the Sunwell for Kil'jaeden. But of course, heroes rose up, the Alliance and the Horde, they went in, they stopped it, and then something really interesting happened. Throughout the course of our adventures, we would find out that Quel'Thas and the Blood Elves, they had taken a Naru out of the interdimensional spaceship called the... Come on, brain! It's the prisons! It is not the Exodar, not the Genedar. You can do this. It is the... Go to the book. You can do this. Go to the book. Go to the Burning Crusade. Go to Raids. It's the Eye. Yes, it's the Eye, and you don't have a description. Why do you not have a description? Tempest Keep! There we go. Thank you, Tempest Keep. So, rewind a little bit. Velen and the Draenei are on Draenor. They're really sad, and they're praying for help. Khadgar is also on Draenor, really sad, and he's praying for help. And eventually, their call is answered by the Naru. A doll that you find in Shefrev. They weren't always there. They showed up with spaceships with the Tempest Keep. But Quel'Thas and the Blood Elves also saw that they had interdimensional spaceships. And they were like, hey, Kasi, that's where we want to go. So they hijacked the Tempest Keep, they took over, and they took the Naru Mu'uru that was left behind to defend it, they took that one prisoner and they gave it over to Quel'Thalas, where the Blood Elves started to drain it from its holy light. They became like light vampires, and they made the Blood Knights. Now, it wasn't exactly painless for them. They got quite the headache from trying to drain the light out of Anaru. But still, you know, they got the light back. They got the power back. You gotta imagine, after the Sunwell being destroyed, that was quite a pickle. After the events of Arthas, that was quite a thing. So a source of light was great. Mu'uru was drained out of light. It was then turned into a Entropius, a darkened state of the Naru. Entropius was a raid boss that we fought during the Sunwell. And then Velen, who has gone through the whole Burning Crusade storyline, he takes the core of that Naru, and he takes the power of Envina Teak that is still left behind that stopped Kil'jaeden from crossing over, and he gives the Blood Elves the most incredible gift possible. He gives them a brand new Sunwell, now infused with the Holy Lights. Isn't that just wonderful? I think it is. So they got their Sunwell back, even better than before, infused with like light and magics and all kinds of good stuff. So there was, you know, a hope, a future for the Blood Elves. And funny enough, when Illyria showed up at the Sunwell many years later, turns out that there's not just light that comes out of the Sunwell, there's also darkness. Her connection to the Void opened up all kinds of crazy stuff. And wouldn't you know it, in Midnight we already know that we're going to go back to the Elven lands. Interesting.
Anu Belore Delana. We will.
So, yeah. That's the idea behind Quel'Thalas and the Sunwell and all that good stuff. And Arthur showing up and Sylvanas. Here in the Ghostlands, we got again Zul'Aman, the Amani trolls, right? So you can see how close the Amani were towards the High Elves. And the Amani, as I explained, there were the Kafraks that were sent off to Keeper Tyr. One of them blew up in Tyr's tomb, that is part of the Artifact quest line. One of them fell a little bit later, was then brought back with blood sacrifices, and was ultimately slain here. And they built like a temple city on top of it. Don't ask me why, but they did. And underneath Zul'Aman, there is that dark influence. So I'm really curious if, you know, events with Xal'atath of the past are coming back into the storyline now. I'm curious if that will play a part at some point. We're gonna find out. If you've never seen the trailer before, like the god of Zul'Aman is really cool. Zul'jin tells a lot of lore and a lot of history, especially with like the Arafi Empire, with their settlement here. It's really, really cool. We also got Windrunner Tower here. And in the Shadowlands, we would find out that Sylvanas allied with the Jailer. And they don't really explain proper in the expansion why. They do a better job in the book. In the book, we find out that a big part of her motivation was the Sorting Hat and not being able to spend the afterlife with your loved ones, right? Especially her brother, Lirav. Like, there's this whole history with it. So what they've done as a memento after the Shadowlands, if you go to the Windrunner Tower, you can now see Lirav in the game. If you're asking yourself, like, who the heck is Lirav? I've never heard about Lirav before. I don't think he was mentioned in the game until this memento. I don't think so. I know it was mentioned in the books, but I don't think it was mentioned in the game. All the same, inside of Zul'Aman, I think the Amani trolls took like control of their Loa. And so we had to like liberate their Loas, I'm pretty sure, I think. Like misuse of the Loa, I think that was it. Zul'jin was quite a menace when it comes to his connection to the Blood Elves, or the High Elves. I think a big portion of Lady Liadrin's story, as well as Lorfmar, has them deal with guerrilla attacks and has them deal with Zul'jin. Like, we're talking about the troll wars being won by the elves and the humans, but make no mistakes, those Amani trolls were definitely tricksy adversaries, so to say, and especially when they united with the Horde, of course. Into the crazy Draenor we left behind in Draenor at midnight. The Yrl and the Light Army, yeah? I mean, if Renilush is this big old battle between Light and Void, and we know that there's a big old Light Army on alternate Draenor, I think it would, yeah, but like at the same time, I really don't like what they've done with Yrl. I really thought Yrl could be done a lot better than making her, yeah, a zealot, I suppose. I had higher hopes for Yrl. I really liked her, but oh well. Oh well. So Windrunner Tower can be found here. I think that's also the place where her brother died. And there was a bit of a, like again, the Sylvanas novel is definitely worth to check out, in my opinion. Because, there's the whole, like a lot of people really enjoy the character of Sylvanas or Nyleria, and I'm sure that there are out there people that really enjoy Verisa as well. Like if you want to know more about the Windrunners, that book is definitely one to pick up. There's also but this is more a classic questline. I don't know if it's still available. I know that it was there in classic. You could find Sylvanas' locket around here. And the idea behind that is that when Illyria stepped through the Dark Portal, she had like this necklace that was gifted to her by her parents. And she separated the necklace into 3 pieces. And she gave her sisters like one of them with like a little message attached to it. And I think that is the locket that we find here. So when you bring it back to Sylvanas, in the quest line, she starts acting like, oh, you know, doesn't matter. This is a family. This is a life that's no longer mine. I'm undead now. You know, I'm edgy. What if life is not torment? But then when you leave it alone, she starts singing Lament of the Highborn? The one that goes like, la da da da, la 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 la. That one. Which they made a whole clip from on YouTube, which is really, really cool. And it's basically like, it talks about the days where they had to fall back when Arthas and the Scourge invaded. Like, fall back, fall back. It's really, really well done. I'm going to a concert next week where they're going to play music live. I'm really hoping that stuff like that's going to come to the forefront as well. Like, they got some beautiful music in this game. Yeah. Before the Shadowlands time. Yeah, before the Shadowlands time with Sylvanas. It is true. So here, Windrunner Village. Yeah. That also speaks to, you know, how influential the Windrunners were. And powerful and all that. Like, they had high positions in court, and all of them had, like, their own strengths. And while Lirov was not exactly the greatest fighter, he still had his strengths. And I'm guessing in Midnight they're also going to make it so we can actually fly around here. That's going to be nice. Being able to being stuck on the ground is, especially since you can just fly everywhere else with dragon riding, it's a thing. Hello! Also, in the Windrunner comic, they come back here and they start just shooting things up. It's great. And I think in the novel War Crimes, this is where Sylvanas and Verisa make their whole plan of murdering Garrosh, I think. Can I do this without doing the Shadowlands? I cannot. It requires level 50 for that plaque over there. Huh. Oh, you need level 50 to use it? That's weird. Huh. Okay. Can't even show you. Anyways, if you're looking for it, you can find the memento here. You could check it out. Just not without level 50, apparently, for some reason. Do you think they will completely rework these zones? Maybe make it even bigger than it is now? As far as I remember from like videos that break the game files and check out what it's like, I think that the city of Quel'Thalas, and the reason why we can't fly right now is because they use some 3D trickery in order to make you believe that there's actually a whole city that stands there, but they've taken some shortcuts in order to just get the city and make it look like it's actually there, if that makes sense. Like, if you go over it, it doesn't look proper. So if we're going to go back to these lands, I think they got some work cut out for them. Will they completely remake it? I'd be down for that, to be honest. I think that these zones, they are part of the overall world. Like, you want to keep the Burning Crusade, alright, I guess so. Like, Outland is kind of ruined. So it doesn't really matter much. But this is still very much a zone where people go, and the elves are just incredibly popular. So why wouldn't you take the moment and the opportunity to completely rework this, I guess. I'd be down for it. Yeah, like it is definitely stuck in time right now. Like how does the Ghostland look now? Like have they actually not been able to fix the damage caused? Is that truly what's happening? Is this just perma? Because if we can fix something like if we can do something like the Barrens with the Wailing Caverns, or we can do something in Desolus where there's like a little bit of forest growing again, could we not fix the Dread Scar? Maybe. Yeah, exactly. Like if the Veil can heal, then why not this area? Yeah. So again, if you've never seen the trailer for the Sunwell, which is again a big portion of Quel'Thalas lore and Blood Elf lore, you actually see the march of the undead here as they come in through the gates. It's so cool. And I'm trying to remember where his ziggurat is. I think it's here. I think he's in here somewhere. We're not going to be able to reach it from here. Okay. I wanted to show off Darkan, like he's still there. Oh, speaking of Darkan as well, for Void Elves out there, Darkan's studies into the Voids are actually what led the Void Elves into becoming the Void Elves. Like, they followed in his footsteps and they started to check out more. Yeah. All right. My bad. I wonder how far it'll take Madsen saying we'll unite the Elven tribes in Midnight. Yeah. And how... Because he mentioned, like, we're going to go back to the older lands, to which people were like, oh, we're going to travel back in time, but that was misunderstood. He meant, like, we're going back to areas like Quel'Thalas. On the Draenei side, in the Draenei Heritage questline, they make mention of building, like, a new Chefref or something. Like, upgrading stuff. So, while they're upgrading Quel'Thalas, I could imagine that they're also going to do something with the Exodar. Because both are Burning Crusade starting areas, ain't it? And uniting the Elven tribes. Like, we've done a similar thing in Legion. At Sudamar, where we brought all the elves together, and at first they were poking at each other, but ultimately they got together for the greater good. Is that it? Maybe. Level 40, by the way. Very pacifist. Very demure. Zoval, not taking any lives. I'm proud of you, buddy. Oh, we're going too low. Thank you. As long as Sylvanas doesn't return, it's all good. I'm pretty sure Sylvanas is gonna return. I don't know how, but I'm pretty sure that she will. High Elves, Blood Elves, Void Elves, but what more? The Nightborn. The Highborn from Dire Maul. Night Elves. God, what else you got? You got a whole bunch of elves. There's many of them. Are there different kinds of Blood Elves in the north? Nah, it's more like the different elves. Yeah. So I've done a video once upon a time, which is the elven races that we have. So once upon a time, the origin is the Dark Trolls that found a way to the Well of Eternity, and they would evolve into the Night Elves with the Highborn. And then from the Night Elves, we would get the High Elves. And then the High Elves became the Blood Elves. And then the Blood Elves became like Wretched and Withered. Then a section from the Highborn also became the Nightborn. And the Nightborn, as they stepped away from the Well, they became so and so. So there's a whole bunch of branches that eventually came out of the Elven trees. I'm guessing that's what they mean with uniting the Elven. So Well of Eternity Arcane? I would say so, yeah. So here we got the Plaguelands, Eastern and Western Plaguelands. We've spoken, although I don't know if this is actually going to be part of the highlight. So we've spoken about Daria Mograine and the Ashbringer storyline. This right here is Light's Hope Chapel. And Light's Hope Chapel became the bastion for the Paladins. It became the bastion for the Paladins during Legion. And underneath Light's Hope Chapel, which is why it's such sacred ground, they buried away like a best of the Paladins and the Light Wielders and the holier than thou. And that's also why the Lich King wanted it. Because he was like, ooh, look at all those corruptible, delicious sources. But the all those sacred people being buried there means that it's like sacred ground. So to the undead, it hurts a lot to be there. But the Lich King didn't care, right? So big parts of the history is that in-game, we would see in Classic that Naxxramas would fly over this area. And we would go into Naxxramas and we would actually defeat Quel'Thalas and we'd get his phylactery. But then we gave away his phylactery for a bit of gold. Because there was like a trader amongst the Argent Dawn, I think, who brought the phylactery back to the Lich King. Which is why Quel'Thalas got a chance to come back in Wrath of the Lich King. Yes, that was on us. We, whoopsie daisy. This is also where, at the Quel'Thalas Lodge, I'm pretty sure it was like a part of the High Elves, Blood Elves, that did not agree with their whole embracing of the Fel. And even though it hurt them, they decided not to follow their path, showing that the Sunwell was not required to survive. We also got Strefholm. We spoken earlier about Arthas and his decision to purge Strefholm. Yeah. Like, Strefholm was a big old city. And to this day, it still burns, I'm pretty sure. And of course, the question becomes, like, could Arthas have done something else? I doubt it. But it is definitely a fun and interesting discussion to consider. The morality of it all. In this land, we would see the rise of the Argent Dawn. Like, you basically have the Knights of the Silver Hand. And they were like the Paladin Order, right? But then all hell broke loose with the undead on the land. And then the Forsaken and Arthas, like, disbanding them. You might remember how he was like, glad you could make it, Uther. Watch your tone with me, boy. You may be yet be my prince, but blah, blah, blah. I'm still your superior as a Paladin. As if I could forget. And then Arthas is like, okay, y'all just gotta go now. You're not doing what I tell you to do, so leave. And I'm pretty sure that from groups of those, they would make like stuff like Argent Dawn. And here, we got Crusaders. I thought. Yeah, Scarlet Crusaders. So, the idea is that the Argent Dawn got infiltrated by Seidan Dafrohan. But not really Seidan Dafrohan. It was actually the Dreadlord Belnazar, if memory serves. And Belnazar killed Seidan Dafrohan, infiltrated the organization, and from within, he started to manipulate and whisper, and he started to make fractures amongst the Argent Dawn, to which Renaud Mograine would, you know, do the whole Scarlet Crusade thing. But as you can imagine, the Scarlet Crusade being infiltrated and led by a Dreadlord is not exactly healthy. So you would end up with things like the Headless Horseman, the one that shows up with Halloween. Yeah, he was driven mad by the whole Dreadlord situation. And the Scarlet Crusade would just be, like, they started out with righteous intentions. You know, save the land from the undead. But, you know, they were pushed far too much into zealotry, up to the point where they could no longer see the difference between the living and the undead. Those that deserve to be purged. Like, everybody became an enemy. Darrowshire is... Oh, God. There's a song about Darrowshire, and there's Pamela Redpath and her family. And she asks us to get like a teddy bear. And in time, you learn about the story and the battle that took place there. Her family that passed away. There's a lot of sadness when it comes to the Scourge. Like, we look at it and it's like, oh yeah, we got ghouls and zombies and butchers and, you know, adults that were taken over by the plague. But no, there were children, families here. All of them wiped out, snuffed out. And it's easy to forget how dark that kind of stuff got. Ding! Yay! 41. Nice. I want to have a little look-see at the lodge. Thank you. Because I was told last time that they turned into, like, wretched. Oh, they did. Huh. I thought they were wiped out by Nephanos. Hang on. I need to double-check this now. Am I blaming my boy Nephanos for something he did not do? Quel'Thalas Lodge is a high elven hunting lodge near the entrance to Quel'Thalas. It was one of the two major concentrations of high elves in Lordaeron. Quel'Thalas Lodge was once a commonly visited Farstrider camp. Lorfmar spent time here and recalls being greeted warmly. By the time of the Second War, Renfar Hawkspear was the leader of the hunters at the lodge. The lodge fell on hard times following the Scourge invasion of Quel'Thalas. It was here that the banished rangers under Renfar took up residence after Grand Magister Romuff returns from Outland. Renfar and his group had dissented against Romash's teachings on moral grounds. To avoid the nation becoming divided in the issue, they were exiled. The lodge served as their home. Quel'Thalas eventually came under attack from Horde agents on behalf of Nephanos, who killed a number of the rangers at the lodge and took the Quel'Thalas registry. Much happened in Quel'Thalas in the years that followed, of which the Lodge remained unaware. Lorfmar, now the sole leader of the Kingdom of Quel'Thalas, made a final journey to the Lodge. He informed the exiles of the recent events that had transpired, telling the tale of Quel'Thalas Sunstrider's downfall and the restoration of the Sunwell. With the Ghostlands in a safer state, the Regent offered Renfar and his company regular aid and supplies. However, Renfar was outraged, outright refused to accept any aid, and threatened to kill anyone Lorfmar might send bearing it. The Regent mourned for the losses that the Lodge had incurred, but in his heart could not fault the exiles for their anger. He left the Lodge feeling only sorrow. So these were people that were not down with sucking magic out of creatures, doing fell. And for that they were exiled. By the time of the Cataclysm, all the elves at the Lodge became wretched after Ranger Lord Hawkspear found an item of seductive energy. Only Kirky Dawnshield and Hawkspear himself managed to escape their fate, while Dawnshield chose to seek out personal assistance at the base of the nearby tower. Okay. Our commander came upon an item of magical energy. My friends, my family, to succumb to its seductive power. Interesting. Okay. So when we were talking about last time, I was talking about how they were able to resist not having the Sunwell. And like, oh yeah, they became wretched. And I was like, oh, did they become wretched because they resisted the Sunwell? But no. They became wretched because they found a magical item and they started to sucky on it. So the idea of high elves needing the Sunwell is still not there. Like, they could survive without the Sunwell. In a similar vein of, like, Verisa and the High Elves amongst Dalaran, the Silver Covenant. Also, Remnant of Stratholme. Whoa, one of my favorite dungeons. I cannot wait for the anniversary. Stratholme Time Walking is gonna be sick. They used to do, like, small tiers with a timed run in Stratholme. I ran that place so many times. And then I started to solo it for the Rivendare's Mount. Ah, such a good dungeon. Hey, awesome Thesaurus. Hell yeah. Always good to not spoil yourself. Trying to think if there's like more here. Okay, so Rolf the Lich King rolled around with Arthas and Darien. Darien is the son of Alexandros Mograine, the Ashbringer. And I'm going to do the whole highlight of the Ashbringer, I guess. If not, check out the story of the Ashbringer. But in essence, the Lich King does not care about his resurrected Death Knights. He cares about results. He cares about getting to Light's Hope Chapel. So Darien follows the will of his master and eventually breaks free. But what is interesting is that with Legion, the Death Knights would come back to Light's Hope Chapel because they need new horsemen. And under the leadership of Bolvar this time around, they come in to get the body of Tyrion, if I remember right. Yes, because Tyrion died in the expansion. Add-on is called Universal Explorer. Yeah, Pamela Rephoff. Yeah. Also Chromie. So, Darien and his Death Knights come to Light's Hope Chapel in order to try and get that body. But Liodrin and the Paladins are like, oh yeah, did you forget? We got, like, the light on our side, and they nearly get decimated. Up to the point where Darien falls and is resurrected or brought back by the Lich King as the final horseman. Almost as if Bolvar was planning on it all along. But this was back in the day that we were pondering, like, ooh, is there a secondary entity within the Lich King helmet, within the Helmet of Domination? Is Bolvar losing control? Like, what is he up to? This was before the Shadowlands. Now, you might think, oh, does that mean that there's, like, a big old anonymity between the Death Knights and the Paladins? Are they angry at each other? But no. In return, the Paladins had this whole secret artifact skin questline, and they needed the help of the Death Knights to get it done. And so they were kind of even. You know, trying to steal Tyrion's body and desecrate it. Give some good transmog. It's all the same, really. We also have Skolemans. So Skolemans has one of my favorite videos that we've ever done. The story of the Braff family. Basically, very, very well-off nobles that allow Kel'Thuzad and the Cult of the Damned into their home for, like, immortal life and whatnot. And so this whole place becomes dark and gruesome, and servants being sacrificed and the butcher doing experiments. And basically, Quel'Thalas teaching his call to the damned about necromancy and all that. So when Lillian Voss enters the stage with the whole Cataclysm revamp for the Forsaken starting area, she goes into Scholomance to take care of business. And a lot of people were really confused when Lillian showed up again, because they were like, didn't Lillian die in Scholomance? But nah, she told us, you know, go on ahead, leave me be. So she didn't die. She had opportunity. Anything for the good mark or rewards. Yep. Enderhall. There was the battle with Enderhall. I'm trying to remember if Enderhall... Wasn't Enderhall the place where Arthas stabbed Uther and killed him? I think so. I think this is where we replayed that moment. And now it's just infected by a whole bunch of Scourge creatures, like powerful Scourge. Across the Plaguelands, it also got like cauldrons going on that we dismantle and we disable. Is this where you killed Quel'Thalas, is it? At Enderhall? Oh. Interesting. Okay. Hearthglen. Oh! Whoa! We go way quick. Wait, there's another place. Hearthglen. So, we spoke about the whole Scarlet Crusade corruption and whatnot. Thank you, Malin. I'm tour guide right now. So, Tyrion Fordring's arc is really, really cool. So, Tyrion Fordring, badass paladin, a very honorable man. And Tyrion, I believe he lived in this area. Can you see it? Yeah, I believe he lived like here. So in the time that the Orcish horde has been defeated, there were still orcs on Azeroth, and orcs were pretty much kill on sight, right? So at some point, Tyrion finds an orc, they end up in a tower crumbles upon them, but this orc saves his life and pulls him out of the tower. And so Tyrion's world is rocked, and he's like, who was that strapping young orc who saved my life? And that orc was Eitric. And now Tyrion was like, it appears that some of these orcs have honor as well. What to do. But then, his fellow humans find out about Eitric. And now Tyrion is conflicted. Like, you know. Hello, Tyrion. You're still alive.
Put your faith in the light,
Yay!
and all is possible.
You're still alive, Tyrion. Let's go. So Tyrion was conflicted between his honor and, you know, his honor. He was conflicted between his honor towards Eitric and his promises and his honor towards the Alliance. But ultimately, he could not stand by and let them murder Eitric and put him on trial and hang him. That was against his code. So, Tyrion is placed on trial, and something really cool happened back then. His punishment was not only the removal of, like, his titles and his lands and blah, blah, blah. They also disconnected him from the light. And you might ask yourself, can they do that? Is that allowed? And the answer is no, they cannot. There's only one moment in the lore where they actually disconnected somebody from the light, which is the Red Plague used against Shafrath by the Horde versus the Draenei. That's the only known case that we actually have like an actively disconnect from the light, if memory serves. Beyond that, it is a matter of conviction. And because Tyrion believed that he was disconnected from the light, he was no longer connected to the light. The light responds to conviction, which is why so-called evil forces like the Scarlet Crusaders are still capable of calling upon the light. It doesn't care about morality, it cares about your conviction. So Tyrion has to leave his family behind, leaves behind a letter for his son, and he lives his life in exile. So eventually his son comes of age, and I think his son joins the Scarlet Crusade, which again, infiltrated by a Dreadlord, not the best situation. So we tried to pull his son out in a classic questline. And we tried to pull his son out of Hearthglen. Which now that I think about it makes way more sense that he used to live here, because this would then be where his son would live. But either way, we try to pull his son out of the Scarlet Crusade, to which his son is murdered. Womp womp. And Tyrion is like, no, my boy! Look what they've done to my boy! Which is really sad. He's also part of the Ashbringer questline, where he helps out Darion Mograine. And Darion is like, yo, the world could always use more heroes. And Tyrion is like, yeah, they could. So eventually he comes back into play. Like the death of his son kicks him back into overdrive. And he's like, nah, this is not going to happen. The whole Wrath of the Lich King storyline plays out, where he picks up the Ashbringer and cleanses it in the holy light. And he stands up against Arthas. And then he pulls victory out of his ass, where he goes, light, give me one final blessing to shatter my bonds. And he does. And the light was like, okay, you get one more. Because after that, he was captured by the Burning Legion, and he was blasted by Fel. And while he tried to hide in his bubble, it wasn't enough, and he yells for his life. But he didn't die in that moment. He would actually be tortured for like a month or two more, for a couple of more weeks, because paladins would find out that he's still alive. So they go on a rescue mission, and unfortunately, they only get the Ashbringer. They don't save Tyrion. Tyrion still dies, but they get the Ashbringer, so that's kind of cool. Tirisfal Glades. Tirisfal. This is the place where Tyr make that sacrificial play. And we know this now, but for the longest time, that was purely just speculation, right? And I think this is speculation that Blizzard was like, okay, that's cool speculation. We're going to bring that into the story. This is when Arthas, like, rolled in here. A lot of people died, right? And then Sylvanas comes into the stage. And Sylvanas was turned into a Banshee. And Arthas rolled her corpse around. And he was, like, taunting her, controlling her. She was not having a good time. But eventually, the Lich King would be attacked by Illidan, who was ordered by Kil'jaeden to take care of his minion, because Kil'jaeden was like, oh, snap, the Lich King is trying to work against me. There was also the whole dislocation of Frostmourne, like the powers of the Lich King were leaking out, and Arthas had to come to Northrend and merge with him. But the leaking of the power also meant that Sylvanas could set herself free from Arthas' control. And she prepared some poison for him. She shot the prince, she lured him into a trap, but she didn't instantly want to take the kill. She wanted to play with her toys, with her food, with her prey. And so Quel'Thalas was able to show up and save his beloved prince. Womp womp. But then Sylvanas was here. And she was like, okay, more Forsaken are going to find themselves again. I want vengeance upon Arthas. I gotta set up base, and we're gonna take care of business. So she goes through the campaigns. She takes care of Gerithos. She fights against Dreadlords. She even makes an ally, quote-unquote, an ally out of Arimafras. And eventually they set up base here in the Undercity, in Tirisfal Glades. To which her fellow Banshees, her fellow Rangers ask her, like, Mistress, aren't you happy? And she's like, no, I'm not happy. I am pissed. And I'm going to get vengeance upon Arthas for what he done to me. Which she did. So she went around. She got her beloved Navanos back. They formed an army. They sent out messengers in order to get some allies, because as you can imagine, just being a Forsaken is a bit spicy. So messengers to the Alliance never arrived. Message to the Horde, they would accept it because Hamul Runetotem thought that maybe they could heal the Forsaken. And for Thrall and for the Horde, like having a place on the Eastern Kingdoms as like a base of operations, not to mention freaking zombies, was definitely a strategic advantage. So they set up in the Undercity, and at first, it was very much like those that were able to set themselves free. They found a home underneath Sylvanas. All for the Dark Lady, all for getting vengeance. As you can see, the Scarlet Monastery is here as well. The Scarlet Crusaders, zealots that were driven so far into the light that they could no longer see the difference between friend or foe, but they were definitely powerful adversaries of the Forsaken. There is the speculated Tirisfal bit. Not until the artifacts will we find confirmation that Tyr was actually underneath Tirisfal. I'm trying to remember where they put him. I think it was here, right? Is it just because I don't have... No, it must be elsewhere. Oh, wait. No, it's over there, I think. So, yeah. All kinds of good stuff. So, time goes on. And Sylvanas, being the High Elf that she used to be, still has a connection to Quel'Thalas and the Blood Elves. Yeah, it's going to be up on the YouTube, Matthias. Yeah. So, she still had the connection to the Blood Elves, and it was Sylvanas that helped them secure a spot amongst the Hordes. As you might imagine, there was quite a political change amongst the High Elves, because they used to be allies to the humans, but Gerithos, Events of Warcraft 3, a lot of happened. Now they were going to be allies to the Horde, which was a bit of a thing, you know, orcs burning down their lands, right? But Sylvanas made it happen. The Blood Elves got the support of the Hordes, and the Burning Crusade was victorious. But then, Wrath the Lich King rolled around, and Arthas woke up, and he was like, hey, everybody, we could party in Northrend. Come on down. And Sylvanas was like, oh boy, this is my chance. I'm gonna get vengeance. Yeehaw! And so she rolled up to Lor'themar, and she was like, listen, it's time, Lor'themar, get your people. And you gotta imagine that at this point, the Blood Elves They just taken care of Kil'Thas. They just take care of the Sunwell. They were still healing the injured. And Lor'Vemar was like, Sylvanas, are you kidding me right now? You cannot expect us to help you out. And Sylvanas was, well, crystal clear about the situation. Either you help me, or I pull out the support of the Forsaken, and you're all alone. Good luck defending your lands against the Alliance or whatever threats that are still out there. And so Lor'Vemar had no choice. His nuts were in Sylvanas' hands. And so we made ready. Onwards we went to Northrend to take care of the Lich King. Sylvanas had very much underestimated how powerful Arthas had gotten, but eventually we got the job done. In between, there was also the betrayal of Varimafras. So inside of the Undercity, for the longest time, the Dreadlord Varimafras was standing next to Sylvanas. And he pretended that he was an ally. It's a bit more smelly than I remember it. That's okay. So Varimafras for the longest time pretended to be an ally to Sylvanas. But of course, Varimafras is no ally to Sylvanas. He was an ally to Sargeras. But of course, he was no ally to Sargeras. He was an ally to the jailer. But in Wrath of the Lich King, we would see Varimafras try to open up portals and summon in Sargeras, which we stopped the battle for the Undercity. And then there was like the idea of did Sylvanas order the Ralph Gate or not? So the Ralph Gate is a big moment during Northrend where High Apothecary Putris unleashes the developed plague upon not only Arthas but also the Alliance and the Horde. And there's been debates about, okay, did Sylvanas order that attack? Did she know about it? Blah, blah, blah. And ultimately, I don't think it necessarily matters. Because it falls in line with Sylvanas' character to make that call, to make that shot, to make the sacrificial play and be like, I don't care who it hurts. I want to take care of Arthas. As well as she developed the plague specifically to take care of both humans and undead. Like, she still developed the plague. So I don't think it necessarily matters a whole lot. So that happened, Wrath of the Lich King happened. But then what? Where do you take a character, where do you take a race like the Forsaken that that whole motivation was in order to take care of the Lich King? And that was done. Bolvar took over the throne, sure enough, but Arthas was taken care of. And they decided to have Sylvanas end herself. Throw herself from the top of Ice Crown, whee, on the Serenite spikes down below. She was done. She didn't care about the Forsaken. She didn't care about Azeroth. She didn't care about anything. She just wanted it all to be done. And that is when she ended up in Hell. And for a long time, she had a pretty cool motivation, which was she allied with the Valkyr, and she wanted to stay out of Hell. That was her whole motivation. And so what she did was try to get more Valkyr. And what she did was try to get more Forsaken, because Forsaken can't have babies. And without the Valkyr, they can't make more Forsaken troops. That has then been changed to work with the jailer. Oh well, rip Sylvanas. But that was the whole point back then. So with the Cataclysm, we would see a new generation of Forsaken rise up. A generation that was actually actively being resurrected by Sylvanas, instead of just those that were liberated from the plague. And we would see the rise of Lillian Voss. Lillian is the daughter of like a high commander amongst the Scarlet Crusaders. And Lillian hated being undead at first. She was like, oh my god, I'm ugly, I'm undead, I'm Forsaken. Daddy, help me. So she showed up at Daddy, and Daddy was like, oh, you're undead? Yeah, I'm gonna try and kill you now. But Lillian was like, nah, I don't think you will. I'd rather kill you. So she killed her dad, and then she killed a whole bunch of the Scarlet Crusaders, and then she killed a whole bunch of the Necromancers. And then Lillian went on a pretty cool arc, in which, if you would have told me that Lillian would someday end up as like a big ambassador for the Forsaken, I would have called you crazy. But she did, and she has an arc to support it, where she became more sympathetic to the Forsaken plight, and more of, you know, this is what it's like to be Forsaken in the world now. And I really wish that we get more, because it's a really cool arc. So they've done really well with Lillian. Eventually, Sylvanas would be replaced by Kalia, and we would have a council leading the Forsaken. In here we are in the throne room of Warcraft 3. You might remember the cutscene where Arthas barges in and he's like, succeeding you, father? There's still the blood of the crown on the floor. Nobody cared to clean it up. In the book Exploring Azeroth, Kalimdor? I think so. It's the one with Shaw and Flynn. They actually find the bloodied crown. So there's a plaque back here which says... may the father lie blameless for the deeds of the son. May the bloodied crown stay lost and forgotten. And in the book, they follow like clues in order to discover where the crown is at. And I thought that they were building up to the idea of Kalia is going to take over from her daddy. She's going to get the crown of Lordaeron. She's going to become the ruler. But I think they expected people to like Kalia more. But they didn't. Another little thing about this is there's an Easter egg here. The sound effects from Warcraft 3 are still echoing in these halls. The people cheering for Arthas to come home, the bells ringing, the dialogue between his father, or with him and his father. Let's listen, shall we? Can't hear it proper, but it's there. It's not on the dialogue, is it? No, it has to be ambience. I've taken care of everything. Yeah, it's a very faint, isn't it? Yeah. That one was way more clear. That was the whole succeeding you father line. Yeah. The rose petals? Yeah. So that's a cute little Easter egg for those curious. The green stuff, by the way, is still from the city being plagued. Trying to think if there's anything interesting to show down below, but it's basically Forsaken stuff. There used to be like a Fable reference with the blind slave girl, but I think they've taken it out. So yeah, that's Undercity for you. So basically this was the capital city of Lordaeron. This is the one that held the line against Orgrim Doomhammer and the invading orcs. And it fell to their own prince, fall into darkness. Then we're gonna go over into Silver Pine Forests. During Duskwood, we spoke about the Scythe of Elune. And this is where we're getting closer to that. So, once upon a time, we would have the Alliance of Lordaeron. And I need to stand up, hang on. Going up. Are we streaming for nearly 6 hours? Okay, let's go. So once upon a time, we had the Alliance of Lordaeron. And amongst the Alliance of Lordaeron, there was Gilneas. Yeah, the sister from Fable. So Fable is a gaming series. And you have like the blindfolded vision girl. She had a character in the Undercity. I'm pretty sure there was a reference to it. So, what do I want to say? Right. We've spoken about the Scythe of Elune and Duskwood. And here we come a lot closer. So we got Gilneas, who was part of the Alliance of Lordaeron. And as you can imagine, rebuilding something like a Stormwind or a Nethergard Keep, it cost a lot of money. And Greymane wasn't about spending all that money. Greymane had learned from his father to stand on your own 2 feet. And he wasn't down with this whole alliance thing. So eventually, Greymane decides, I'm going to build a wall around my city. Now some, like his daughter, think he did that because he was really sad. But no, he did it out of a position of strength. Gen believed that he did not need the alliance, and so he locked his people away. And building a big old wall is great at keeping like the Forsaken out, or other threats. But it's also great at keeping things inside, like the Worgen. So, at some point, they are in the war, and they are trying to think, like, what's the Forsaken It was the Scourge, right? I should know this. Because they had the wall. I'm pretty sure like the Scourge were knocking down their walls and they were like, oh no, we need to do something. So Archmage Ottogal was like, you know what? I got a solution. I learned about these Worgen. They come from a different realm. And we can summon them in. So he didn't know the whole history with like the Druids and Malfurion putting them to sleep. He just knew Worgen, powerful force, let's bring them in. And Gren agreed to this. And at first, the Worgen were a great powerful force. Nah, it was before the Horde invasion. I'm pretty sure it was the Scourge that attacked them. And they were like, we need the Worgen to fight back against the Scourge. And at first, the Worgen were great. And they were doing the thing that they were needed to do. But then the Worgen turned on their own people. And, well, the curse started to spread. The Gilnean people started to turn into Worgen, including King Gen Greymane. He was also bitten. He was also cursed. So, the cataclysm then happens. And as I explained, Sylvanas had thrown herself on the top of Icecrown, and she was given visions about the Forsaken, who were being thrown away by Garrosh in order to take over Gilneas. Like, Garrosh did not care about the Forsaken. He was ready to throw all of them at the wall. And Sylvanas was like, yeah, hang on a minute. That's my bulwark against the Infinite. If I don't have my Forsaken, I'm going to have to go back to hell. So she showed up again. She had done her whole arc with the Bark, with Valkyr. And she was like, step aside, Garrosh. Those are my Forsaken. I will lead the charge into Gilneas. I'll do what you want me to do. But I need you to step back. And so, okay. Sylvanas takes over and starts to lead the charge into Gilneas. Now, one thing that she was told not to do was use the Plague. So obviously she used the Plague. And she also killed Gen's son. A whole bunch of things happened. Like, the Gilneans were not winning the war. Safe to say. And their wall had crumbled with the Cataclysm. Things were happening. The Worgen curse. So they were in desperate need of aid. And thankfully for them, the Night Elves were able to bring them in and reintroduce them to the alliance that they abandoned before. And now Gen Greymane had to bite into a whole bunch of humble pie and had to ask the alliance, like, please accept us back, we need your help. And at first, Varian Rin remembered Gen Greymane separating himself from the alliance of Lordaeron. He remembered that Gen didn't help out the alliance, so why would the alliance help out him? So this whole arc about how the Worgen were able to wrestle with the fury within, with the beast within, and regain control. So too did Varian have to regain control. Because Varian at this point, he had been split apart by Onyxia. He had then been put back together by Onyxia, but not as he was before. He was still very much struggling with himself. The furious side, the Goldrin side, the gladiator versus the charming, loving king and father. Up to the point where he started to hurt Anduin himself. Physical abuse. And so he had to gain control, and Gen helped him with that. He helped him with holding that Goldrin inside of him, and Varian got to the point where he actually became like an avatar of Goldrin, the chosen of Goldrin. So on the battlefield, poor Garrosh, Garrosh tried to invade Night Elven lands. Imagine trying to do that, right? Guaranteed to get your ass kicked, but nah. Garrosh tried, and he had brought over these enslaved Magnerons, the ones from Northrend, like the big woolly creatures. But the Alliance had now the Worgen, and they had the Chosen of Goldrin leading the charge, and Garrosh and the Horde absolutely got their asses kicked thanks to that. And after that, Varian became the High King of the Alliance. The Gilneans rejoined the Alliance. But Gilneas was still fallen, like Sylvanas had completed the mission. And she also showed Garrosh how she was going to keep the Forsaken numbers going, because again, they can't reproduce. And that had the dialogue with, do you know, have you considered, Sylvanas, what this means? What is the difference between you and the Lich King now? Isn't it obvious, War Chief? I serve the Horde. Watch your clever mouth. B-word that we no longer use. Oh, he said, bitch, what? No! And so, you know, That was kind of the arc. Oh, man. We're so much. It's so good. Not because of the bitch word. I don't particularly care that he said bitch or not. But just that whole arc was so good. I loved the arc so much before the fucking jailer. Why, Zoval? Why did they have to do it? Why did they have to make her an ally of you? The force behind the Lich King. Make it make sense, Zoval. It makes no sense. We're not done yet with our, redemption arc, that's for sure. Anywho, in Silverpine Forest, so the war with Gilneas was a little bit more technical difficult. Like, Gilneas was dealing with its own infighting. There were nobles, there were, revolutionaries and whatnot. And eventually, what happens during the storyline is that Sylvanas has the Valkyrie, right? And the Valkyrie are basically her bonus lives. So what happens is she teams up with Godfrey. Godfrey, at this point, had figured out that his king was a furry and had thrown himself from the mountains. Sorry. I mean, it's true, though. He had figured out that Gen was a Worgen, and so he was like, I'd rather be dead than live under the king of a Worgen, right? And he'd been resurrected in undeath. And so Godfrey was like, I'd rather be dead than an undead, so I'm just gonna shoot you, Sylvanas. F you. And he shoots her point blank, and that takes her out, even though they previously established that she needed to be, like... She needed Serenite, but I guess he used Serenite bullets. Whatever. She's not immortal, right? So the Valkyrie honor the pact and they bring back Sylvanas. And in turn, Sylvanas captures Lorelei? I think she's called Lorelei. And Lorelei is the daughter of one of the rebels. Oh, he is the one from the Warrior Order Hall campaign in Legion. He's not Godfrey, he is a Worgen. You had Greymane, and then he was like, oh god, I do not remember. What is he called? The one who surrenders. Crowley! Thank you. Crowley's daughter is kidnapped by Sylvanas and Godfrey, and is like under threat. He has to surrender and give up, or they're gonna take out his daughter, and so he gives up. And a lot of Worgen were really pissed about that. And they kept on fighting. So there was also this part here where they were worried about, and this is a really little niche little thing, they were worried about being converted into undeath. And there was a bit of a confliction here. So they were worried about being converted into undeath by Sylvanas. And so they embraced the Worgen curse and they became Worgen. But then people pointed out, yeah, but hang on. We can make Worgen Death Knights. What's that about? To which Blizzard was like, yeah, but it's not the same. So I guess it's a matter of what kind of resurrection. Like, one is not the same as the other, which is fair. Like, Plague resurrection and making them Horseman resurrection is not the same either, I guess. But that was kind of neat. There's definitely some cool storylines happening in Silverpine. And of course, you go to Shadowfang Keep, which is Archmage Arugol basically holds up in there. So Arugol was the one who summoned in the Worgen, and he loves his puppies, right? So... yeah, but you're still resurrected in undeath, ain't it all? You made a Death Knight, but it's still undeath. Like, it's still, but doesn't matter. So we went in there first to take care of Arugol, who would then show back up in Wrath of the Lich King. And then Godfrey with the Cataclysm goes into the Shadowfang Keep, and you take care of him there. And these days, Gilneas has been given back. Like, they called it retaking Gilneas, but it's more like Gilneas has been given back. I don't want to talk about retaking Gilneas. Right, moving on. Hillsbrad Foothills. Resistant rather than immune? Maybe. They gave it some kind of explanation. Yes. And you're confused. What were you confused about, by the way? If you're confused, by all means, ask me, and I'd be more than happy to clarify. This right here. In Warcraft 3, you might remember that our command destroyed Dalaran. And then in Wrath of the Lich King, we are in Dalaran. And then Legion, we have Dalaran. And Wars Within, we have a Dalaran. And now we have no Dalaran. And I got the question from people like, how was it possible that there was a Dalaran? Didn't our command destroy it? And this, during Classic, this was more solid purple. Like, you couldn't really see through it, as far as I remember. And this is where they, like, rebuilt Dalaran. Underneath a little dome. And once it was ready, with Wrath of the Lich King, we had the whole Malygos getting his sanity back and declaring war on all the mages on the world. So they took Dalaran, blasted off the Northrend in order to fight against Malygos in the so-called Nexus War, but also help out, of course, with the Northrend campaign, the Wrath of the Lich King, and all the campaigns that followed. In Hillsbrad, you'll find some of the more amazing quest lines, in my opinion, because it deals with the Forsaken. Forsaken are one of my favorites. There is, I think this is the Sunflower area. The Sunflower minigame. If that's not here, then it's in the Plaguelands, where you can get yourself... It's Plants vs. Zombies. Go play Plants vs. Zombies. In this quest line right here, you get to be a quest giver, and you meet Johnny Awesome, and you get to give out quests, and then you go into the zone, and you find who you gave quests to. And you help them out as well. It's kind of great. What else we got? Oh yeah, you put humans in the farms. Human farms. And then you grab a shovel. And you use the shovel to get the seedlings out or back in. Like, yeah. Humans on a farm. We done a sit down in South Shore. So if you go into the Caverns of Time and you go into Escape from Durnhold, the one where Thrall escapes, you can go to South Shore as it was back in the day. Then there is a South Shore version in Classic, and this is the South Shore version in Cataclysm. So with Cataclysm, the Forsaken plagued South Shore, which would play a part in Mr. Pandaria. If you've done Mr. Pandaria Time Walking or Remix, you might remember how the Admiral at the beginning was so hell-bent on destroying the Hordes. Well, that's because what they done to South Shore. Like, the people of South Shore has just been turned into blight, blobs, slimes, and shit. Like, yeah. Back in Classic, this was a big old hub for PvP, which they turned into a event. South Shore versus Tara Mill. And I remember back in Classic, we had like a role-playing paladin in front of the lines, hyping people up, getting them ready to charge in. It was freaking Lord of the Rings style, man. And what would happen is that you would push the horde back to Tara Mill, and then the guards come out, and then the guards would help them push you back to South Shore. And sometimes South Shore would just be dominated, and you would not be able to use like the griffins and all that. It's great. There's also Alterac Valley, a conflict between the Frostwolf orcs and the dwarves. I want to say a name, but I don't remember the name. And the Frostwolf orcs are the clan of Thrall's parents. That also has like a Drakvar in there who guided Thrall on his first steps to shamanism. The Stormpike dwarves. Thank you kindly. And there's a conflict about who gets to be in the Alterac Valley. But mainly it was just a reason to kick the shit out of each other. You could summon an elemental ice giant or like a big old tree. But these days, like, Alterac Valley's been changed in such a way that you didn't really do the objectives anymore, which was a bit of a shame. I don't know if they fixed it by now. Back in my day, you could spend days in Alterac Valley. And it's gotten to the point where... Okay, this is not game lore, this is more noble lore. It got to the point in Classic where I was chilling in Alterac Valley, and it was like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and a so-called friend of mine was also in that Alterac Valley. And they knew that I was just AFKing in the base, right? I was AFKing in the base. Now, in my defense, I would argue that I was protecting the base, okay? Doesn't matter that they were 3/4 further into the game, and they were like near the Horde base. I was protecting the Alliance base. That was my job. Now, this friend actually reported me for AFKing, because I don't think we had the AFK system back then. You couldn't right-click and report. You had to actually send like a ticket or whatnot. And I kid you not, a GM actually teleported me out of Alterac Valley. And they told me, like, this is not how you're supposed to play Alterac Valley. And I'm sitting outside of Alterac Valley. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? What? Now, at the time, I was like, whatever. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll go to bed. But now, thinking back to it, I'm like, you don't dictate how I play my game. What? But can you imagine these days to have such an active hand on GM? I sure couldn't. Jesse, hello there. So that was kind of funny. I'm trying to think of like major storylines that took place. Honestly, I played this more during Season of Discovery than I ever did during leveling, to be honest. like I said, like you got the quest givers where you help them out later. Ruins of Alterac. GM Island, if that was even real. I think it was. So here we got Durnhold Keep. This is where they kept Thrall when he was still the slave gladiator. And this is that he brought low when Adalys Blackmore thought it was a really good idea to decapitate Rifa and throw her head in front of Thrall's face. Yeah, that definitely woke up some bloodlust within Thrall. And he absolutely wrecked this prison camp. Race to the opposite boss. I despise what the community has done to the battleground. I miss fighting our graves during quest. Yeah, but like, it's a symptom of the time, ain't it? It's a symptom of the time. But yeah. So if I remember right with South Shore, by the way, because we're looking at it now, it's like all plagued and destroyed. If I remember right, South Shore was the place where Stormwind made landfall when they ran away from the first horde. And then they traveled up to like Lordaeron in order to make contact with the king and be like, hey yo, listen, horde invasion. We gotta unite. We gotta stick together. So yeah. And South Shore was just a bit of a landmark for the Alliance, to be honest. It's like a place with a lot of history. Trinity Nelson, thank you very much for Prime. Welcome. So yes, in South Shore there was a meetup. In case I don't upload it, where the origin of the Ashbringer plays out. So he brings it over, and his hand gets corrupted when he touches it. His children nearly touch it, and he's like, stop, don't touch the crystal, it's evil. But they find out that the crystal is not just purely dark. Infuse it with enough light, and it turns to the light, and they were able to forge it into the Ashbringer. And who forged the Ashbringer, you might ask? Why? None other than Magni Bronzebeard, no longer the King of Diamonds. So we got Magni, and we got a crystal that swaps between light and dark. Could they bring in the Ashbringer storyline? It's a bit niche, but I think it would be pretty cool to finally get like an explanation. They could also bring in the Atamal crystal in that way. Would I ever go back to murdering noobs in Season of Discovery, or do you think it fell off? Never say never. But not right now. Because right now everybody is 60, so there are no more noobs to gank. Everybody's just max level now. So for those who've never seen this, by the way, this is the Caverns of Time. And in essence, for this dungeon, what you need to do is you go to Durnhold, right? And you deal with the whole Thrall escapes from Durnhold. And then you go to Tar Mill and you finish up the dungeon. However, for no reason whatsoever except for showing off moments of the past, there are a lot of cool moments that happen in South Shore. References to characters that you might never have thought about. Let me show you what I mean. So here's our boy Quel'Thalas in his human form before he became the Lich, pondering about necromancy, still in his, part of the Kirin Tor. These models are updated, by the way. These used to look a lot shittier, obviously. And interestingly enough, there are, in the game files, there are like old human models that they thought about giving to everybody. And they don't use them. Except for in this location. So I wonder if they've updated them since Classic. We can find out. We also have Renaud Mograine from Scarlet Monastery together with Sally Whitemane. Yes, those two that would join the Scarlet Crusaders. And little Jimmy Vishash. I'm trying to remember. Wasn't Vishash like the Houndmaster or something? Quel'Thalas is a necromancer for Warcraft 3. The same. The one and the same, Sebby. Just this is a moment in the past that shows him before he became the necromancer. He wasn't instantly a necromancer. He dabbled in it and he's like tried to bring back rats or whatnot. So yeah. Vishash the Torturer. There you go. The Interrogator. Yeah. Then... Oh, they actually do have the models. Look. Look, this is actually kind of cool. Dude. This is what the humans looked like once upon a time. This is what they had in mind. If you go into the model in the game files, this is humans. Like, what the fuck? They look so weird. They look so weird. And we also have the one, the only, Nat Pagel. And a little Easter egg, if you hang around long enough here, our boy Nat Pagel will tell you things that are going to happen in the future. He is hanging out with Hal McAllister, and as boys do as they fish, they talk, right? And Nat likes to talk about his dreams. Nat Pagel can predict the future. He has prophetic dreams, and nobody ever mentions this, ever. Just wait. He'll say it. He'll say the thing. Is Nat Pagel a bronze dragon? Now we're asking the real questions. Is Nat Pagel a bronze dragon? I've done a Hearthstone video on him, because once upon a time, Nat Pagel was like a Hearthstone card that showed up in a lot of decks. He's so cool. Because he will like randomly fish up a card, and it's like people wanted to hear the story of Nat Pagel, so he actually did. Okay, we'll come back to him in a moment. I don't have the ADHD patience for... Go on, then. Had that dream again last night. Which one? So I'm on some mountain, right? With some big old tree. Bunch of elves running around all over. Out of nowhere, some 300-foot tall demon or something walks up and starts climbing a tree. And if that weren't crazy enough, that big old demon gets killed by a bunch of little floating light things. Oh, I was also a female elf in that one. Yep. Nah. I've heard a whopper or two in my day. That one takes the cake. So, Nat Pagel was able to predict the Night Elves blowing up Nordrassil in order to defeat Archimonde at the end of Warcraft 3. Yeah, and nobody makes mention of this. Nobody cares. Again, older models for the humans. I had a lot of fun using these in Model Viewer during video making. Yeah. These look absolutely gorgeous. Look at that. Oh, by the way, the one and only. Hello, Navanos. You and Sylvanas having a wonderful time? Yeah. I'm honestly, for the life of me, trying to remember who these two are. I think they're random paladins named for Warcraft 3, but I do not remember for sure. And then Magistrate Henry. Sure. But then the thing that we came for. Hi, Quel'Thuzad. Bye, Quel'Thuzad. Hey, look at that. Don't mind me. I'm just gonna scoot right in there, yeah? So we got Fairbanks, which is one of the rarest if you kill in Scarlet Monastery. The one and only Tyrion Fordring, Isilian and Abendus at his side. Arcanist Doan from the Epic that you could find at some point. And then in front of us there is Commander Mograine, who will be known in the future as the Ashbringer. Now here they're talking about, you know, the Dead Rising in the Undead and whatnot. Paladins amongst each other. They fought the Horde. Captain Sanders and Captain Hans in the background. Excuse me, I just need to get in here, yeah? Don't mind me, just keep on talking. What do you propose, Mograine? Propose? I propose that we prepare for our loved ones, family and friends, for the possibility of an undead holocaust. And there is this. There's a box. What's in the box? There's a darkened crystal in the box. By the light, what is it? I have had this object in my possession for 10 years, ever since Blackrock Spire. I wrested it free from the remains of an orc lieutenant, a dark caster. It is from their homeworld. Do not get too close. I laid a hand upon it once, only once, and never again. The memories of the day still linger, as he shows his mangled hands. I surmise that this object is the living embodiment of shadows, darkness. It is a manifestation. It is a void. I do not see how this evil artifact is relevant to the undead. We must destroy it. No, old friends. It is very relevant. Let me ask you this, brothers and sisters. Can good exist without evil? Can there be light without dark? And if that answer is no, then could it be possible that because this artifact exists, its polar opposite must also exist? Could you imagine what the material manifestation of the light could do against the undead? Nonsense, Mograine, it must be destroyed! Zap. Shock, and then silence overtakes the crowd. It consumed the light. Impossible. Zap. Now let me try. Is it getting lighter? Its coloration, it's changing. Zap. Alright, just feed it with light. What could ever happen? Zap it a little bit more. Look at this. Look at this. Little hammers in there. Woo. By the light. By the light, could it be? Could this be it? I must know. I will know. Touch it. Touch it. Oh, boy. Reaches out to touch the light crystal. It is beautiful. What I felt when I touched it. The light coursed through me, and I through it. It healed my spirits. Your hand, it healed. Let us never speak again of this day. Our enemies are many. They need not know that we hold such artifacts. I have seen it. From this blessed crystal we will forge a weapon, and this weapon will hold inside of it a piece of each of us. And when it's used against undead, it should cast them down, and in its wake, it will leave only ashes. The Ashbringer. Yay, that's gonna be my weapon in the future. That's wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Haha. So yeah, what if Beladar has like a similar thing? Is this new lore? Did we know this before? This makes the lights look like void and light share the same nature but polar opposites. This is very old school lore slash stuff. This is Warcraft comics lore way back when. There's the Ashbringer comics, the Ashbringer storyline. This is, I think this lore was invented before the Caverns of Time of the Burning Crusade. So this is like bringing in old story and into the game. But yeah, they are two sides of the same coin. Where the light sees one singular truth, the void sees 1,000, and neither one of them knows what is really going on. Only when both come together, you find true clarity, right? But I will say that the light has changed over the years. Hello. You okay? Please, madam, I have 3 hungry children. Did I say 3? I have 10 hungry children. Oh, now I don't believe you. Because once upon a time, the lights, it would, like even the orcs were absolutely terrified from it. And the undead were like cowering in it. In the book, Beyond the Dark Portal, at some point I believe they capture like an orc. And Turallion is like, let me interrogate this one. And he shows up and he shows like a teeny little bit of light. And the orc goes, oh my god, no, not the light. I'll tell you whatever you need to know. So, there was that. And there was also the whole bit about they were fighting the Horde at Blackrock Mountain. And Turallion was trying to figure out and trying to find his connection to the light, right? And he was like, how can it be that the universe allows such evil as the Horde to exist? If the light embraces all from this world, then how can such a thing as the Orcish Horde exist? And then he realized it. The Horde were not from this world, which meant that he could exterminate them with impunity by the light. Sorry, I used the wrong button. Woo. So, yeah, I really like that storyline. What quest keeps this moment? This is literally in there. This is, if you go to the Caverns of Time and you go to Old Hillsbrad, which is a dungeon, normally you would just go to Durnhold and then you go to Har Mill. Instead, you want to go to South Shore. You can find like little lore references going on. So yeah, the light has definitely changed a little bit across the board. We do have a video up on the channel, by the way, about the Ashbringer, if you want to know it. It's one of my favorite storylines. The Ashbringer storyline is sick, because beyond this, what we would find, for those that are unaware, this crystal would end up in the hands of Magni Bronzebeard, so the same Magni that we have in the War Within. And at the time, Arthas had like picked up Frostmourne, and we would now know that he knocked out Muradin, but actually back then, they thought that he had killed Muradin. So Magni, filled with grief and rage at what Prince had done, started to forge away at the Ashbringer, and he made this, like the picture. I put it up on Discord the other day. Let me bring it up. It's actually sick. So the Ashbringer is created. It ends up in the hands of Mograine. Alexandros Mograine. Alexandros Mograine? Alexandros Renault Darien. Yes, Alexandros Mograine. And with it, he exterminates the Scourge like nobody's business. And this is the Scourge back when, like, Arthas and Lordaeron and Quel'Thalas. And so, of course, someone like Quel'Thalas started to pay attention, started to notice. He's like, this Ashbringer is a bit of a problem. And back then, there was this whole weird allegiance with the Dreadlords going on. And so, manipulation and infiltration was going to be their aim of the game. It was going to be the part. So what they did was infiltrate the Argent Dawn by taking over the body of... Oh, Dufframar. No, not Dufframar. What was your name? Oh, God, what was your name? You were Seidan Duffrohan. That was it. Took over the body of Seidan Duffrohan. And so Seidan Duffrohan ends up in, I believe it was like Strefholm. They end up in a trap. And the Dreadlords... Melganis? Belnazar? Traps him in a trap. Whatever. Takes over his body and infiltrates the Argent Dawn. And then from within, by using the corpse, they start to... Belnazar, thank you. They start to manipulate and split the organization apart. And over time, the Argent Dawn would split apart into the Scarlet Crusade. And the Scarlet Crusade from day one was infiltrated by a Dreadlord. As you can imagine, that might lead to some spicy moments. For example, you know the Headless Horseman with Halloween, who goes around rhyming, killing everybody? Yeah, he lost his fucking mind because of the Scarlet Crusade. Also one of the better stories in WoW. Point being, Alexandros Mograine, big threat to the Scourge. And the Dreadlords were on Team Scourge, so they were going to take care of him. And they manipulated his eldest son, Renault, the Dreadlord whispering to him, like, you should be in charge, and you should wield the Ashbringer, and I'm going to make you rich and famous. There was also Sally Whitemane, of course, part of the Scarlet Crusaders. And Renault would do what the Dreadlords wanted him to do. Renault would betray his father after this big old massive trap by the Scourge, and the Ashbringer whacked away at the undead, and there was like a mountain of corpses, and Alexandros had actually won. And so he lowered his blade for just a little bit, because he was tired, and Renault picked it up and he stabbed his dad in the back. Chuck! Sorry, Dad! My son, what are you doing? Succeeding you again? A bit of a deja vu, ain't it? So by that action, Renault corrupted the Ashbringer. And his dad's soul was handed over to Quel'Thalas, like his whole body and his soul. And so Quel'Thalas did his whole corruption thing on it, which is the reason why if we go into... There is no book for Classic Naxxramas. Oh, interesting. Why not? Why is there no book for Classic Naxxramas? Well, you'll just have to believe my word on it then. Zakarm, thank you very much for subscribing. That is why Alexandros Mograine turned from the Ashbringer into one of the four horsemen. Wielding, like, the corrupted Ashbringer and all the good stuff. And his youngest son, so Renault betrayed him, and then his youngest son, Darien Mograine, found out about his father still being there. I think he got, like, a dream or, like, visions or the light or whatever. He found out about his daddy being there, and he was like, I need to take care of business. So he goes into Naxxramas in Classic, right? You thought you went in there? Nah, he went in there. And he did battle with his dad, and he picked up the corrupted Ashbringer. He took out his father. He took him out of his misery. And now, from the corrupted Ashbringer, he started to hear his father whisper.
Crunchies, lucky doos and root.
That is not what his father whispered to him. So... It would be amazing if that's what his father whispered, but it wasn't.
Good fortune to all friends of the Grummels.
So we got an Ashbringer, right? Holy weapon, can do some really cool shit. Pew, 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 pew. Hey, and then we have Renault, who betrayed his dad.
Many deals for a friend of the Grummels. Like you.
So, where are my corrupted... oh, they're here. Legion artifacts. Yeah. So, Ashbringer. Oh, so fucking cool. Yes, I have all the Ashbringers. And then corrupted Ashbringer. Let's do this.
May your feet find good trails.
Yeah. This was a secret skin. I think you can still get a grow file. A secret skin you could get for the Ashbringer. It was a really sick question. I'll get to that in a moment. So, his son betrays his father. Blade goes dark. His youngest son tries to save his father. And from the weapon, he starts to hear his father whisper to him. And he was like, bring me to the Scarlet Monastery. To which Darian was like, Dad? And you're like, bring me to the Scarlet Monastery. I got things to do. And this is actually an event that was part of the game. I don't know if it's still part of the game. It was part of the game. Because you could get the Corrupted Ashbringer in the game, right? So what would happen is if you bring it to the Scarlet Monastery... is... from entrance, all the Scarlet Crusaders would start to bow down for you. It was so fucking sick. Look at this. And they were like, oh shit, is that the Ashbringer? No way. And they're thinking, like, this is on our side, right? Like, the Ashbringer's on our side. This is gonna be great. So they're all friendly to you. You enter the monastery. And the moment that, as I just explained to you, the youngest son did this, we got to do this moment in the game. And we bring the corrupted blade to Renaud Mograine, the one who betrayed his father. And within the blade, there rests his father's spirits. You hold my father's blade. My soldiers are yours to control, my lord. Take them. Lead them. The impure must be purged. They must be cleansed of their taints. And in comes the spirits of High Lord Mograine, aka the Ashbringer, slowly walking up to his betrayer, to his son who murdered him, who is still pretending to this day, like, oh yeah, I didn't do anything. No, I will follow the Ashbringer because the legend of the weapon, right? This one was so sick. Renaud. Father, but how? Did you think that your betrayal would be forgotten? Lost in the carefully planned cover-up of my death? Blood of my blood. The blade felt your cruelty long after my heart had stopped beating, and in death I knew what you had done. But now the chains of Quel'Thalas hold me no more. I come to serve justice. I am Ashbringer. Zap. You are forgiven. So fucking cool. So this moment would happen if you brought like the corrupted Ashbringer and just Renaud gets murdered by his daddy-o. Again, in the comics, it was Renaud who brought him over. But I just love that moment actually happens. But that wasn't the end of the tale. Far from it. So Darian brings the weapon to Renaud. Daddy comes out. Yeah, Darian, I mean. Yeah. So Darian does the thing. And then Darian returns to Light's Hope Chapel in the Plaguelands, where Quel'Thalas has this massive undead army that comes to the chapel. Because under the chapel, it's like hallowed ground, like the greatest paladins are buried there. Big old feast for resurrection, right? So Quel'Thalas had his army ready, and Darian has been on this whole journey about setting his father free, the legacy of the Ashbringer, and he realizes that he needs to make the sacrificial play. And he realizes that in order to get rid of the corruption of the blade, in order for the light to embrace it once again, in order to truly set his father's soul free from the pain and the suffering, he will have to take his place. So he takes the blade, and he stabs himself in the gut with the Ashbringer, and open in the sky, the heavens break open. The light pours down onto the battlefield. The entire undead army decimated because Darian Motherducker Mograine made the play. But then, Darian was in the hands of Quel'Thalas. And now he was going to feel what it was like to be his daddy-o, be converted by Quel'Thalas, and that's the reason why in Wrath of the Lich King, when you make a Death Knight, Darian is actually there fighting for Arthas the Lich King, as they had taken him over. And eventually, again they would attack Light's Hope Chapel, again they would liberate themselves, the Ashbringer would be thrown to Tyrion, who would purge him with the light, and basically defeat Arthas. Yeah. Ashbringer lore is sick. Yeah, so this weapon, by the way, Grofal, you're mentioning like, oh shit, you got the corrupted Ashbringer skin. What they did is, in Classic, there was this whole rumor mill happening about
Shop.
how you could possibly get your hands on the corrupted Ashbringer, right? And in Legion, they did this secret quest line for the Paladins, in which you would basically do what people rumored that you had to do in Classic. So you had to fish, and you had to find this mob, and blah, blah, blah. Had to find this book in Alterac Valley, all this nonsense that people had come up with. Until at the end of the chain, you would unlock the special skin for your weapon. I think it's still available to this day. Pretty sure it's still available. So here, we got Foradin's Wall. No, Darian's father's soul has been set free. Yeah. Maybe stolen by the Frostmourne? I guess it was set free with Frostmourne shattering. Because the Lich King steals the soul, I think. But here we got Foradin's Wall. And this is like the Halfyy Highlands. And this is very much Foradin of Arator. This is where the original Halfyy Empire rose up. Their capital was Strom. This is where the human empire originates from. And as you can tell, they're not exactly doing well. It looks a lot better these days, but it used to look like absolute trash here. But this is where it all started and where they then spread out from. Generally trying to think if the Halfyy Highlands is like cool lore to talk about. I mean, I guess we could talk about the origin of the human empire, I suppose. But we spoke about that. We spoke about that during Quel'Thalas, where real short, Foradin of Arator brought the human kingdoms together. They forged it here. And then during like the Alliance of Lordaeron and like the whole first invasion of the Orcish hordes, there was betrayal from within and letting the horde just get by. There's also... Oh, I don't remember it from the top of my head. Okay, so... Donav Trollbane, the one who joined the Alliance of Lordaeron through the Dark Portal, wasn't he like the ruler of this place? And then there's one of the horsemen. We resurrected the guy that was dead. And his son was a dickhead. So we resurrected the guy as one of the horsemen, and then he took care of his son, and his son was not leading the Halfyy proper. Trollbane mentioned, howdy try. For us. Yeah, I honestly, I need to double check what's going on there, because I don't remember massively. Also, a Halfyy Bessin, who can hold the thingy magic. The son was undead, right? Yeah, but he wasn't always undead. Oh god, there was something there. There was something like a classic quest line where we went in here for, and then he came back as an undead, and then we had to go back in because as an undead, didn't he like betray it to the Forsaken? I just realized this is where we plunder Storm. Surely I realized that before, right? Yeah, surely I did. Yeah, of course I did. I think he tried to betray Sylvanas. I think so as well. Wait, what? The Ashbringer was used to absorb the corruption of Sargeras' sword as Silith is rendering it unstable and its power wanes. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that it's gone. Maybe it's now, you know, darkened. Galen, he pretended to be on Sylvanas' side. Yeah, the rest Trollbane quest. Yeah. I mean, we went in there for that. I need to look it up. Because I don't know this from the top of my head. And I think it's the last zone, ain't it? Yes, it is. So, oh no, we got a Hinterlands as well. Alright, let's do the Hinterlands first. So, okay. Hinterlands. A big part about the Hinterlands is the Wildhammer Dwarves. And we've spoken about the Wildhammer Dwarves before. After the War of Three Hammers, we would see the separation, and they would first set up in Grimbatol. Lots of darkness unleashed in Grimbatol, and so they had to go set up elsewhere. And they would go here, where the Wildhammer Dwarves would make like a big old connection with the Griffins, and they become like Griffin Riders and Elemental Wielders. They did it great. Instead of, you know, living under the mountains, they were more like, the open skies. That makes me very happy. This is also the place where we were tricked in doing the whole Hakar Egg quest line. Whoopsie daisy. And... There wasn't the spider... Yeah, Shadra. So, the Spider Loa was here for some reason. Oh. I just remember it massively because in Classic there was a quest line where they had you like take a picture from a turtle, and then you had to travel back and forth between like Thanatos and this place, and the traveling took like an hour. Melod Azul Farak, my lordy, take me back. You remember those quests like Melod Azul Farak that allowed you to summon extra bosses, or the Scepter of Maraudon that allowed you to open up a quick teleport gateway? Oh, I miss those little things, man. That was well good. Love me hammer, love me griffer, love me lightning, simple as. Yeah, that's how we do. Another portal into the Emerald Dream right here. Remember the zone when I used to level solo? It was so hard. Back in Classic often, because this was one of those zones where it would send you prematurely. And there were parts of the zone that were just over-leveled that you couldn't do yet. These days, I wonder if it's still as difficult. We didn't give the artifacts a proper farewell. We, as you mentioned, like we got a lot of power, Azerite power. And we used the artifacts to suck out the Azerite power. We used the weapons that were powered up to suck out Sargeras' corruption from his blade. And then they just kind of became dormant. And, similar vein, how they said, like, oh yeah, we're totally gonna do a proper farewell for the Order Halls. That never really happened. Nor did we get a proper farewell for the artifacts. And in the case of Xal'atath, she suddenly showed up again. My Ashbringer, I don't know. What they could do, which might be interesting, is if they go with the idea that our weapons are actually being wielded by the main characters again. So, for example, a Thrall that is now somewhat more reconnected to his light, to the elements, could perhaps pick up the Doomhammer again. Maybe that's the better play. Sharpbeak was also a massive questline in which you had to save it. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna look up... my mind is still on the Arafi. I'm gonna look up their info. I am curious. Level 47, by the way. Level 47, just cruising, chilling, flying around. I haven't killed a single creature yet. I am Pacifist Zoval. Not allowed to hurt a single soul. That is me. Let's see. Stromgarde was founded under the name Strom as the capital, the first human kingdom. After uniting human tribes, Arathor's king Thoradin set out to found a new capital. According to one legend, his father appeared to him in a dream, and they set up Strom, blah blah blah. Okay. Although Arathor grew and prospered after the Troll Wars, Thoradin feared that his kingdom would splinter apart if it overextended itself, and maintained that Strom was the center of the empire. After his death, Arathor expanded across the eastern kingdoms, and they founded new city-states, the first of which was Dalaran. Many magi ended up moving to the latter to escape growing prejudice and the strict laws of governing magic in Strom. Fun fact, once upon a time, like the church looked upon mages as if they were heretics and stuff. It was really funny. Not haha funny, but more like, that's interesting storytelling. Like in the vein of a Ronin that was being judged by a paladin, or looking at the high elf's ears like, you got long ears. That's kind of funny. Strom could not compete with the economies of the other city-states and steadily declined in power. Many of the capital's nobles, circa 1200 before the Dark Portal, they sought to leave Arafi Highlands in favor of more fertile lands in Lordaeron. Thoradin's descendants, the last of the Arafi bloodline, argued that Strom should not be abandoned, which incurred the displeasure of the greater citizenry, who were also eager to leave. The nobles soon left regardless and moved to Lordaeron, where they founded a city-state the same name. Shortly after, Thoradin's descendants, led by Valdir, also abandoned Strom, and they sailed south to found the Kingdom of Stormwind. Strom was left in the hands of a few ruling families who were too stubborn to leave, including the Trollbanes, the descendants of a famous general of the Troll Wars, who ascended the throne and the ruling family. These families rebuilt the crumbling infrastructure of the capital and renamed it Stromgarde. Although Stromgarde developed into a nation on its own right, the city would never regain its former glory. Stromgarde fell into ruin, became a battlefield between the humans of Stromgarde, the bold-faced ogres, and the syndicates, but did not play. After several battles against the forces of Stromgarde, the Horde eventually attacked the capital of the kingdom with a merit assault. Oh, it did not play a massive part in the war then. Oh, okay. During the conflict, Archmage Trelane attempted to defend the Tower of Arathor, but was unsuccessful and exiled himself to Stormwind City. There he asked his former apprentice, Archmage Malin, to help recover some belongings that he had left behind at the Mage Tower. The latter accepted the request and sent his agents Squerto and Kryten, who gathered the artifacts with the help of Alliance adventurer. The sword Trollklar, the legendary bane of trolls and heirloom of the Trollbane family, was sealed away in the Trollbane family crypt and protected by Prince Gallen Trollbane, until adventurers of the Horde killed him, unsealed the tomb, and took the sword to Zengu. Zengu tasked the adventurers to retrieve the sword so that it could be used against the trolls of Zul'Grup. When he got the sword, he quickly took off alone, but was killed by humans of Stromgarde. They returned the sword to its proper place, resealed the tomb, and once again split the sigils amongst the people, under Galen's successors' orders. By the time of the Cataclysm, Galen Trollbane was raised by the Forsaken and aided them in reclaiming the sigils and ultimately Trollklar in the city, this time for their own use. The Forsaken and the League of Arathor sent adventurers to continue fighting against the bold-faced ogres and syndicate criminals. So, at this time, Dun of Trollbane is on Outland, doing his thing there, and we got Prince Galen Trollbane, who was murdered by the Horde in Classic. And then, by the time of the Cataclysm, he's been resurrected in Undeath by the Forsaken. And they want his sword. And they wanted the sword at first for Zul'Grup, but that never happened, because they brought the sword back to the tomb. And then they wanted the sword again for Cataclysm, and they got it this time. And then a Legion. Sometime before the third invasion of the Burning Legion, Galen was finally able to reclaim Stromgarde Keep for himself, before or after he broke off from the Forsaken. The city was now almost completely under the control of undead Stromic people, including Stromgarde defenders, cavalrymen, troll hunters, and citizens. Only a group of the Widowbark tribe trolls remained in the former mage districts. When the Knights of the Ebonblade came to resurrect his father, Galen tried to double-cross them and made a last stand in the Sanctum, where he died a second and probably final time. Ha! As agreed by Anduin and Sylvanas, Stromgarde was taken by the Alliance to act as a base for the Stormwindian people participating in the Gathering, and this is in the book Before the Storm. They tried to reconnect humans and Forsaken, like the living and the dead. It didn't go too well. Did not go too well. At the time of the Fourth War, the citizens of Stromgarde returned home. Oh. Okay. Along with the Stromgarde army. And the League of Arathor. The city was rebuilt and supported by engines of war. Oh, this is the warfront, ain't it? Yeah. The battle ultimately ended in the Alliance's favor, with Stromgarde being victorious, thanks to the leadership qualities of Bronzebeard, Trollbane, and Trellian, and the tenacity of all the soldiers who fought. Their victory restored Stromgarde Keep as the capital of its eponymous kingdom, leaving the Horde stronghold of Argorok in ruins, and the very settlements of the kingdom in the hands of the Alliance once more. Following the Alliance victory, the soldiers returned home, leaving only a few guards behind as a precaution. After the end of the Fourth War, Illyria and Trellian and over 20 soldiers were searching for Horde refugees fleeing Stromgarde Keep. Although not visible in-game, the Sanctum and the Crypt are still present in the capital, lore-wise, and have been inspected by Matthias Shaw with Dawn of Trollbane's blessing. So, the Horde lost the warfront, and now it's back in the hands of Dawn of Trollbane. Ha! Interesting. Yeah, I thought that they played like a bigger role, but nah, the Sun was just defeated in Classic and then brought back as a undead, as a Forsaken. And then he tried to do a Trixies. Alright. Cool. That is Eastern Kingdoms done. My lord, there was a lot to talk about. Nice.